Work session for February 26, 2026. We're starting at about 5 after 1. First item on the agenda is our citizens' comments. Sinead, do we have residents who would like to speak?
Yes, we do, Mayor. And instead of reading the script, I'm just going to let y'all know, you have 3 minutes each to speak, and the time will be up here. And our first speaker is Brian Burns, followed by Ralph Hudnall.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, and planning and zoning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm here to support the strength of our ordinances and zoning regulations regarding short-term rentals, especially the situations where they're clustered next door to one another in a residential neighborhood. This issue is not opposing tourism or responsible property ownership. It's about protecting the integrity, stability, and long-term health of our residential neighborhoods and our community. Our zoning code was designed with a purpose. Residential districts were created to foster stability, neighborhood relationships, predictable land use, and long-term investments. When multiple short-term rentals operate side by side, what is tended to be a residential neighborhood, that character of neighborhood changes, sometimes dramatically. Strong, clear ordinances will improve our neighborhood in several important ways. I'll list them. First, protection of property values. Homeowners invest their savings, their future, and their family's security into their homes. When residential areas begin to function like a rotating lodge district, uncertainty can buy a factor of confidence. Legal and financially security. When rules are constant and well enforced, everyone understands their responsibilities. Third is the community safety and functionality. Neighborhoods function best when residents know one another. Orderly development. Zoning exists to guide growth the way that aligns the city's comprehensive plan. Finally, consistency and predictability. Strengthen the ordinances is not about restricting opportunity. It's about balance and ensuring the residential neighborhoods remain places where families can build roots, where children can grow up and their neighbors can form a long-lasting relationship. We can support tourism, sure, and economic activity without sacrificing the fundamental purpose of residential zoning by enacting thoughtful limits.
1 minute left.
Particularly preventing the clustering of short-term rentals one next to each other. We protect the long health and safety and stability of our community. I respectfully urge you to adopt clear, enforceable measures that uphold the intent of our zoning and safeguard the future of our neighborhoods. Thank you for your time and service in our city. I also wanted to add, on my way over here, my short-term rental next door, they were arresting him or somebody. I don't know who he was, but.
Ralph Hudnall, followed by J. Oscar Ward.
Afternoon, Mayor, City Council members, City staff. My name is Ralph Hudnall. I reside at 1632 Drexel Drive, Irving, Texas, 75061. I'm here this afternoon to address you in the support of renaming the Lynott Park over by the old Captain Nemo's. That's the best way I can describe where it's located. Everybody knows where Captain Nemo's was. From the Lynott Park to the Lynott Spurlock Family Park. Mr. Spurlock has served this community in many, many ways. First moving here to 1964, he and his 3 girls moved here. Then in 1972, he started this Jack Spurlock Realty Company. In that capacity, he had a wide range of real estate services, including Irving residents and out-of-state clients. It included the buying, selling, renting, mortgage services, and ins and outs of mortgages and contracts. He has served on this council several times. He has also was awarded, I believe in 2004, he was awarded the High Spirit Citizen Award. He has served on the chair of the ICVB, thank you, from 66 to 2002. He has also served on the City Council for 2 terms and has chaired the Planning and Zoning Commission. His working with the Ambucks Group is he worked with both groups. There's two groups, the Irving AMBUCS and also with the Greater Irving Las Colinas AMBUCS chapters. In that, he has presided over $2.5 million in the tracks that we provide for the mobility impaired students, being from young children to the elder adults. And from that, the look on their face, he would travel to Chicago, Los Angeles, and he would present these trikes to these kids, and he's done them here in Irving, and I've helped him with those many times. He is a former Navy guy. I love the Navy, Al. And his love for this country and his love for this city has always amazed me. At the age of 15, he lied about how old he was, got in the Navy, just so he said I could serve this great country of mine.
30 seconds left.
Again, I thank you for letting me do this presentation, and I hope that we adopt to this that I requested. Thank you so much for your attention.
Former Councilman J. Oscar Ward.
Thank you. Good evening. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City Staff, Oscar Ward, 608 Farine Drive. He said it all. I'm here to support Jack. A lot of people don't know his middle name. I didn't know until I really got to know him. His name is Jack Ward Spurlock. So anyway, we traced the tree. I don't know if we're related or not, but he's a great guy. He said it all. His biggest deal, besides being an elected official and working on the city council and also being ICVB, headed it up for a number of years. But his main thing is the AMBUCS. And so that's one of the reasons when I joined the AMBUCS, he was involved. And when you go to your first meeting of AMBUCS and you have a giveaway of these Amtraks, and you have the parents up there, you have the young child there. You see the young child get on there and start pedaling. I mean, it really gets to you big time. Not only was he a local officer here in Irving, he was a national officer of AMBUCS. So he's, I don't know how many millions of dollars he has really raised. And I remember the night I was on the council, we gave an Amtrak to Ray Serta. A lot of you know Ray Serta in the park. And so anyway, I just want you to support what you're fixing to vote on later on, or maybe at the council meeting, to support Jack in the naming of or renaming of that park to Jack Spurlock. Thank you.
Chris, do we have an operations update?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a couple of legal matters we have to deal with, so we're going to, if we would, KO, read us into executive session.
Yes, sir. The time is 1:11. The Irving City Council will convene into a closed executive session. This is to receive legal advice, to discuss economic development negotiations, and a personnel matter pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, 551.087, and 551.074.
Summer fun ahead.
We're going to add different amenities.
This is the fun part of the job. You're out here actually doing something.
This construction will lead to one of several new attractions that are expected to debut this summer. We visit multiple sites to check out the progress. Serious training.
Report to triage over there.
You're still just trying to go through the motions like it is real.
Irving firefighters take on an exercise simulating their response to tragedy. See how new technology is helping with efficiency. Plus, the program celebrating Black culture now on City Source. We have been talking a lot about the new indoor aquatic center coming to Center Park. Weather permitting, it is expected to open this summer. But that is not the only improvement underway in Irving Parks and Rec. We visited several spots seeing upgrades.
Definitely the sounds of construction.
Yes, a lot of demo going on.
This work is making way for a brand new playground at Northwest Park. Here's an idea of what it will look like.
A whole bunch of different nets and climbing events and slides and swings. One day it can be like it's a castle, next day it's a spaceship. What they're working right now, that's going to be where the swing sets are.
The new equipment replaces a playground that was more than 25 years old. Along with the play equipment on the way, this new outdoor workout area is already available for use. Also, more of the park will be illuminated, and existing lighting is being updated.
We've gone to a new LED lights, so the whole trail will be lit up now.
All of the improvements are on track to be complete this summer. Our next stop is the Heritage Senior Center courtyard.
It's a giant, great area, but it's just underutilized.
That's expected to change with new additions, an expanded turf area, video screens, an outdoor kitchen, and more shade.
Because it does in the summer get quite warm.
I bet. This project is also scheduled for summer completion, and then inside,
Get a whole new ballroom floor.
right now, there are gaps and breaks covered with tape. Patrons have noticed.
We have classes, exercise classes, we have dances, we have parties. Every day we're using it.
After more than 2 decades of heavy use, the floor will be replaced in the next few months. Here at West Park, work is beginning on another big project. It's based on the popularity of a recent improvement at Southwest Park. West Park will get its own futsal court.
We've always known it was something popular. We've had issues in the past where the kids would take over a tennis court. So it was just common sense to give them what they wanted, give them what they're asking for, give them a place where they can play.
The futsal court at West Park will double as a basketball court. Additionally, there will be a new half court for basketball. All of this is also expected to be open this summer. Teams are also making progress on a new section of the Campion Trail.
Which goes from River Hills Park going north, just past Fraser Dam. That's along the outfork of the Trinity River.
It's expected to open this summer. At just under 2 miles, it gets the city that much closer to the long-anticipated goal of having a complete, connected Campion Trail.
It's going to be really nice.
Some of those projects are paid for by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through federal community development block grant funds. The city of Irving wants to hear from you. The 2026 resident survey is now open. It gives people
Just want to give a quick discussion on that, which is the ordinance adjusting the common boundaries between the city of Irving and the city of Grand Prairie related to the property along the Beltline Road. I know we have representatives here from Grand Prairie. Chris, is there anything we want to speak about specifically on that?
Orlando, do you want to introduce what we have here? And then we have a PowerPoint presentation, Mayor and Council.
Absolutely. Mayor, Council, we've been working with the city of Grand Prairie over for about 2 years now. Is that about right? Or maybe longer? And we finally came to a point where we have a boundary adjustment that's mutually beneficial between the city of Grand Prairie and to the city of Irving. So that said, Dan has a PowerPoint, and he'll turn over to Dan.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, Council, staff, visitors. Dan Vedral, Traffic and Transportation Director. This is a very abbreviated, but just, I think it tells the story of what's going on here. Of the city limit boundary adjustment with Grand Prairie along Beltline Road. We have had a history of working with Grand Prairie and some other boundary adjustments, Hunter Farrell, MacArthur, and Rock Island, just to name a few. I'll give a quick background. Some very good right-of-way exhibits, city limit development example, some of the things that precipitated this discussion, exhibits, and some impacts. The city of Grand Prairie requested the city of Irving consider adjusting the west limit to mutually benefit both cities, accommodate development on the west side. This is primarily, at this stage, it's broken out into 2 phases on Beltline. Basically, this is between Shady Grove south to Hunter Farrell. So we're on the very southern west part of the community to accommodate development on the west side of the Beltline Road there. You should have an exhibit in your packet that shows you this in a little bit greater detail. But what this is basically showing you here is the blue is exact. This is for just illustrative purposes only, but basically this is where the current city limit line is, and it's going to be adjusted to the red. If you can see the red, what we're doing is it goes between 125 to 150 feet, sometimes a little more, all the way from Shady Grove south to Hunter Farrell. It's wildlife on the west side down here, so there's a name change as you cross the road. And what it basically does is it moves the red line, which would be the new west city limit line of Irving would be about 15 to 20 feet back a curb. So there's a large difference in where this goes. What this means is you can look at two developments right here that have been in place for probably 15 plus years at Trinity Boulevard. The buildings are all in Grand Prairie, and Irving basically has got the grass and part of a parking lot. So the buildings were not in the city of Irving to begin with. What precipitated it was the building down here, where there's now two. And this gives you an idea where the current city limit actually cuts through a building. And if you're the business owner, you know, what city am I in? You got different building codes, different inspections. It's just difficult. And now we'll be adjusting it over here to the east side. I'm going to go back one slide. I got a little ahead of myself. I apologize. It'll stay on the west side from Shady Grove to Oakdale, and then it switches over from Oakdale to the east side of Beltline Road south, same 15 to 20 feet, and it goes all the way down to Hunter Farrell. No residential units are affected on this. But this is what precipitated the discussion. So Grand Prairie went out and hired a surveyor, and they're actually showing where the new right-of-way is going to be here. These are the right-of-way parcels. And then, like I said, at West Oakdale Road, it switches over here and goes from the west to the east side. North is always on the top of the page, east is on the right, west is on the left. And then we go down Beltline Road, eventually all the way down to Wildlife Park and West Hunter Farrell. Now, when you change the city limit lines, there's also other cities. Code enforcement, who enforces what? Police, maintenance of the road, there's street lighting out there. All that switches. I'm gonna go back one. Everything on this half of the road here, which was once in the city of Irving, will now be transferred to the city of Grand Prairie. So if there's road maintenance, if the lights are out, traffic signage, traffic striping, code enforcement, and all that will be shifted it's shifted between the cities. It's almost a 50-50. So in Irving here, basically this other half of the road here will be going into the city of Grand Prairie. So Grand Prairie did approve the boundary adjustment at their city council at 12/16/25 last year. It reduces from Irving the road maintenance responsibilities for the city of Irving. It's about half. It's a 6-lane divided road. In the ordinance, in its final, is going to clarify police, fire response, if there's accidents, who does what. Stormwater drainage, if there's a road, you're going to have water. That means all the pipes underneath, as well as the conveyance systems will then become Grand Prairie's underneath that new right-of-way, the new city limit. And maintenance, street lighting. In building permits, code enforcement then falls upon Grand Prairie in that area. Irving would be granted permission to maintain. We do have a monument sign that's in there right now, so there would be a separate license agreement that would allow us to keep that in its current location. The Parks Department in Irving would be responsible for the maintenance of the monument sign. Municipal drainage utility assets within that would be then transferred over to Grand Prairie. Water utility still will maintain its assets within the Beltline right-of-way being provided to Grand Prairie. That's a very high-level view, but I think it tells the story.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Hey, Dan, question. Who actually has the responsibility for the maintenance of Beltline Road? Is that half ours and half Grand Prairie's, or is it all ours, or what's the deal?
As the city limit exists today, and I'm going to go back to a slide if I may, sir. Forgive me, I usually have them all memorized. Right now, from Hunter Farrell north all the way to Shady Grove is under the responsibility of the city of Irving, Texas. Maintenance and operation of that roadway facility. Signs, markings, lighting, signal lights. What will happen now from Oakdale, which is pretty much in the middle here, it's approximate but very close, it's a major road. From this point here south, Beltline Road will now be under the maintenance responsibilities will be that of Grand Prairie, Texas, as part of this agreement.
Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Dan.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank the staff for being here today. Sorry to hold you all up, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have some people here for short-term rentals. So So we'll go ahead and jump to that. Then we'll come back to the regular agenda.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members. Shane Diller, your Code Enforcement Director. This presentation on short-term rentals is the follow-up to a presentation that was given to the P&D Committee on January 14th. In that meeting, the committee gave staff direction to return, both specifically with several items of potential regulation that we could amend into our ordinance for short-term rentals. And the presentation you're going to receive today is going to walk through those specifically, and then there's some additional items that staff has identified and or will discuss with you that we would want some feedback on for a potential amendment that we would bring back to you. To recap real quick, short-term rentals in the city of Irving are defined as any residential lodging that is offered for less than 30 days, that is not a hotel or a motel. And our current requirements require that short-term rentals register with code enforcement and that they maintain hot tax accounts with finance, that they post certain regulations in the property related to noise ordinances, contact information for police and code enforcement, that type of information. We prohibit, and this was in an April 25 amendment to the ordinance, we added prohibitions that minors could not rent or solely occupy our short-term rentals. That advertisements of short-term rentals on the websites, the Airbnb, the VRBO, those host websites, cannot advertise actions or conditions that violate our zoning code. We require in the ordinance a minimum of a 24-hour stay. That, in effect, is a 2-night requirement because of the way the hours of stay occur in short-term rentals, similar to hotels. 24 hours would require 2 nights. They're required to have $1 million insurance policy for liability on the property. And we have an explicit enforcement process that we amended into the code in April of last year. And most specifically there, that an STR registration is eligible for revocation after a 3rd violation in a year. So here I'm going to walk through some of the proposed regulations that we specifically discussed and that staff heard at the P&D meeting in January. The first was about inspections. And so we would amend the ordinance to require both initial and annual inspections. So when someone applies initially for a short-term rental, we would inspect the property. And then annually, as they are required to renew now, we would perform a reinspection to ensure that they're compliant with the code. We would look for exterior issues, property standards requirements that all properties in the city are required to uphold, things like high grass and weeds, trash and debris, junk motor vehicles, those sorts of things. We would look for the required off-street parking that is available at the property. If a property was constructed with certain parking, the parking is still available and not consumed in some other way. And then there's an addition later on that we'll talk about regarding requiring hosts specifically post parking regulations in their rules, and we would look for that if that were adopted into the ordinance. And then we would look at residential swimming pool safety standards that the codes currently have on the books for residential properties regarding the properties where there are swimming pools, that they have the required safety barriers and self-closing latches and various things that are required by those codes. On the interior, we would look at the housing standards that we currently have in Chapter 8 in the code. So we're not adding standards to the safety of the occupancy there, but we're looking at things like unsafe wiring or uncapped wiring housings where you have the plugs. You'd have that the proper information is posted as required, because that was a question that was brought up last as to, we could require posting, but without inspection, do we know that they're doing that? We would look for that in an inspections program. We would look for unpermitted or accessory structures that are being used as part of the short-term rental. ADUs that we're unaware of, garage conversions or additions that might be unpermitted. And then we'd look for evidence that they're exceeding the habitation standards. Our density standard right now is 2 people per bedroom plus 1 in a home. And so we would look to make sure that the number of beds and the way the configuration of the use of the home is used is that they appear to us on inspection that they're meeting that standard. The other thing we'd be able to accomplish in an inspection program that we're proposing here is to perform a monthly exterior inspection, basically a drive-by from the public right-of-way. This is a practice that our multifamily team currently performs with our fourplexes, and we have looked heavily at what they do with inspections to kind of guide what we might be able to do here. So we'd be able to have an inspector look at the exterior of the property on a monthly basis and make sure that there's no issues with high grass and weeds, trash and debris, trash out early, that sort of thing occurring when they inspect. That would also give us an ability to look at the property unannounced as opposed to the annual and initial inspections, which would be scheduled. These monthly inspections would be unannounced inspections, so they wouldn't know when we were coming and be able to get a natural sense of what the condition of the property is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's the point of, if you're not going to actually get onto the property and be able to see down the side and in the back, what's the point?
Well, what we do there is what our property code is, the property standards officers that work in code enforcement, this is how they do their work every day. They drive down our streets and they look from the public right-of-way at all properties they're passing. So we would do that same work, and so it would probably occur much more often than once a month, because the property code officers are already going to be driving these streets. But the inspectors that are specifically looking at short-term rentals would document the condition of the property, whereas the work we do now, we don't document conditions until we find a violation. Whereas in this situation, they'd make a proactive, from the public right-of-way, visit to the property and document through a photo or some sort of notes in our system as to what the condition of the property was there. That's not going to give us a sense of issues inside or a sense of issues in the rear, but it does give us the ability to make sure that these properties that are operating in a way that is different than our traditional single-family homes in neighborhoods are at least appearing as though they're meeting the standards that the other single-family homes are trying to uphold. Inspections would require resources. So as we've looked at the numbers of STRs we have, and we've looked again at our multifamily program and the timing it takes for inspectors to do their work, and we've modeled our assumptions here heavily on how we currently inspect fourplexes. We have roughly just a small fewer amount of fourplexes right now than we have currently registered short-term rentals, and we have one person whose 40 hours a week daily work is staying on top of the fourplexes. So we know that that stock of short-term rentals that we have would require, a body to just stay on top of the known stock. The second inspector would be assigned to beginning to chase down the operating but unidentified yet short-term rentals, ones that the company we're working with or that we have identified exist, maybe in a certain apartment complex or in a certain neighborhood, but because of the photos online and the various circumstances the company we have that data mines the internet uses are not able to identify the specific address. This person would be able to partner with the company and spend staff time just looking for these unidentified short-term rentals and then backing up the other inspector with responding to complaints that are coming in, so that if a complaint comes in, somebody's available to go directly to that and not have to worry about also making the inspections that are scheduled on the known stock. So we're expecting that we would need 2 housing inspectors to create the program, and then we would need a customer service representative. The administrative staff in code enforcement is fairly maxed out as it is, maybe a little more so. And in order to deal with the flow of additional calls regarding the scheduling of these things and the processing of applications and scrutiny that we would perform under the enhancements we would bake into this amendment, we would want a customer service representative to help us there. That would probably also benefit the department broadly in regards to improving our focus on customer service. We would need to look at how we'd pay for these things. So we would look at increasing the fee. We would run studies. We've begun to do estimates now, but we would get much more detailed if the concepts were approved and we moved toward a an amendment to look at what the fee would need to be to recover the full cost of the program. That way, the STR operators are bearing the financial burden of operating this and not the taxpayers. We would analyze that as we move here into the spring into our budget process and do our fee schedule updates each year. We'd make sure that we're doing cost recovery there like we do with our multifamily program currently. And then we would need workspace. I know many of you have visited my shop on the third floor here, and things are a little tight. And so in order to bring on 3 additional staff, we would need to, and have already begun discussions with CIP as to where, how we might reconfigure, where we might find space for those folks. So one of the requests at the P&D meeting was a prohibition on multiple leases in these properties. We would amend the short-term rental ordinance to require that only one lease per living unit per rental period occurs. And so a living unit is, of course, the one single-family home or the one apartment, the one side of the duplex. And then the rental period would be whatever the folks on site are there. If they're there for a weekend, then there's only one lease for that weekend. If they're there for most of the month, there's just one lease there. This would apply to, and we would amend this into our short-term rentals ordinance, so it would not apply to long-term single-family rentals. It would only apply to STRs through these amendments here. In addition to this circumstance, we still have, like I'd mentioned earlier, our occupancy standards that we would look for. And this change in lease requirement wouldn't change the need to keep the number of people staying in the short-term rental to 2 people per bedroom plus 1 or fewer in those circumstances. So it's not that we're replacing that standard with this. The one lease could allow for up to these 2 people per bedroom plus 1. We talked about off-street parking and parking concerns. We could amend the ordinance to explicitly state a parking requirement. The request was minimum of 4 spaces at the property or 1 per bedroom, whichever is greater. We've done an assessment of all of our currently registered STRs and found that 85% of those meet that standard now. So this burden isn't something that's unreasonable, we feel, for STRs to accomplish. We would have the issue of the existing licensed STRs that could not meet that 15% or so that don't have that standard. And we would propose some sort of process to allow them to have a review of their circumstance as we look at renewing their STRs or continuing to allow them to operate through the Board of Appeals so they could be granted a special exemption in those circumstances if it's approved. We would also, and this ties back to what we would look for on the inspections when we post rules in the property, we would also require in the ordinance that hosts post in their STR ads on the host websites and at the property an off-street parking requirement, that all of the off-street parking must be consumed prior to using on-street parking. And so though that would be posted on the website and would be posted in the property, our enforcement beyond that would be challenging. Obviously, as you see vehicles parked on the street, knowing whose vehicle's what and watching where they go isn't terribly feasible for the way we operate. But we would at least be able to know that the hosts are messaging to their guests that they need to abide by that requirement. And should we or the police department respond to a call for service or a complaint at an STR and find that that's not occurring, we would be able to reinforce with the guests what the host rules were and connect with the host to make sure they knew the guests were not following those rules.
I want to be clear on this one, Shane.
Yes.
It would not be illegal as a matter of law for a guest to park on the street.
Correct.
What we're stating is that we would require as a matter of law the host to establish rules that guests have to park off-street if off-street parking is available. But what we couldn't do under this proposal is ticket a guest for parking on the street for violating some city ordinance. We don't have the ability to do that. What we could do is require the host to have a rule. How strictly the host enforces the rule is up to the host, but we could require the host to have the rule. I just want to be clear on that. We're not creating a false expectation that guests wouldn't ever park on the street, and if they did, they were violating a city ordinance. That wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, that's not what's proposed.
Mayor. Philip, so we're actually transferring the responsibility to the homeowner, am I correct?
We're requiring the homeowner to establish a rule that they would enforce on their guests, but we don't have the ability to prohibit a guest from parking on the public street. It's a public street, and as long as parking is allowed generally to the public in that location, we don't have the ability to state that the guest can't park there. What we're trying to wedge into any avenue we can to address parking, and this is an idea we came up with, well, what if we at least had the hosts establish a rule? We probably get a high level of compliance based on that because people who visit STRs want to get a good review from the host. So we believe that this would help. It wouldn't entirely prevent the problem, though.
But that's not really, they don't have the authority, period, to go ahead and say, yes, you cannot park on the street or whatever.
Correct.
Am I right?
That's correct. The best they could do would be to give the guest a bad review
Okay.
for
No, I get it.
violating house rules.
So we're hoping.
It's a way. It is not a magic solution. Outside of the city banning public parking on the street, we can't address that issue unless we ban it for all the public.
So staff additionally identified, as we reviewed other ordinances, we identified some other standards that we felt were important to adopt into our amendment, especially if we're going to perform an inspection and be able to see what the condition inside the STR is, and those are related to fire safety. First, we would require that a floor plan be submitted when the application is submitted. That allows us to ensure that the STR host isn't overpacking the property and is complying, at least conceptually in the floor plan, with our occupancy and density standards. We would also require that they install smoke detectors in all bedrooms, regardless of the home's age. The International Fire Code has some requirements for more modern homes, homes built since the 90s regarding fire smoke detectors and fire safety systems. In this situation, we would require it of all STR homes, regardless of the age. We would require carbon monoxide detectors, one outside of a sleeping area, anytime there are fuel-burning appliances or attached garages present, and many of our STRs have those circumstances. And then we would require fire extinguishers be on site, one minimum 5-pound ABC type fire extinguisher, which is common in a home. There was a discussion of renewals and our strict approach to renewals, and we would ensure that renewals were dependent on compliance, and that as we looked at the inspection we would perform, if an inspection occurred and we found there were deficiencies, we would issue them a notice of correction and give them a brief amount of time to correct that. If they did not, we would not renew the STR. We would also look at the property's history in the past year, and if we found that they had 3 property maintenance violations or housing violations in the prior year, we would not renew the STR in that circumstance. This same 3 violation trigger is the one we use for revocations in the ordinance now. That covers the gist of the discussion we had in January at the P&D meeting and many of the regulations we discussed there, in addition to some ones that staff has proposed. I want to shift now and talk a little bit about location-based or zoning-based regulations that we could consider. I'm going to present 3 options here. One we're calling the Arlington philosophy. It's not exactly as Arlington does it, but it's driven around the early discussions that Arlington had with how they looked at amending their ordinance. Their ordinance did withstand challenge in court, and it creates buffer zones. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a more straightforward conditional use permit requirement, where in single-family areas, there's a CUP that would be required. And then we'll talk a little bit about quantity limitations that we might be able to impose, especially at application review, looking at STRs that are on a street. So the Arlington model, if you will, stems from us looking at Arlington's approach. They created a short-term rental zone around their entertainment area, around the stadium area in Arlington. And then they created what originally started out as discussions about freeway distances and freeway frontage, instead landed on a zoning approach, but that in effect, when you look at their mapping, creates many STR locations along their freeway frontages. And then ours here would, as is illustrated by the map, would look at creating a similar sort of 1 mile distance from freeways. And then the purple area you see on the map is our urban center, which we would be treating as sort of tantamount to their stadium and entertainment center in Arlington. And then it would be prohibited outside those zones.
Just
Yes,
one
sir.
correct. The purple is a 1 mile buffer around the Las Colinas Urban Center.
Yes.
So similar to what Arlington did around their entertainment. So we're looking at two permitted area, two areas,
Right.
a 1 mile buffer around the Las Colinas Urban Center, and then a 1 mile area adjacent to all of our freeways.
Yes, thank you. This and the other zoning approach we'll talk about in a minute would both require significant noticing. You may remember that last year zoning noticing regulations changed, and we have to heavily notice citywide many approaches like this. So in this situation here, we would need to notice anything that is not in the blue or not in the purple, where the STRs would be allowed through our regular registration and inspection program. And in the gray areas that are heavily populated by yellow residential properties, and the green dots are our current STRs that are operating, we would need to notify those properties of the change in land use right that would come through a zoning approach like this. That would be about 61 cents per notice. There's a postcard that planning uses for that. And the rough estimate for this approach, and it's again rough because we'd need to notice the property owners themselves and then tenants in the property and property owners off-site if they're not at the property, is estimated somewhere right now about $35,000 plus for this approach.
Shane, before you go off that slide, I want to just kind of, in a nutshell, what this does. The areas in blue and purple would be the areas where STRs would be permitted. The areas outside of the purple or blue, they would not be permitted anymore. The existing ones would still be allowed to operate as legal nonconforming, and as long as they didn't abandon that use, they could continue. That's essentially the approach. We would have to provide notice to every single-family property owner outside of the blue and purple. And so in addition to the cost, Shane, what's the number of single-family residences that we would have to provide notice to?
30, well, between, and we were bouncing these numbers around today, it's a rough estimate of between about 38,000 and 50,000 single properties. that
So
would need to
somewhere
be
between
noticed.
30 and 50,000 residential property owners would get a notice from us that would use the language in the state law that says the city's considering regulations that may involve you losing the right to use your property the way that it's being used, because that language is statutory. And I'm saying that because I want to be clear, this is a pretty significant public notice, probably create a lot of questions that we would have to address. The cost is the cost, but it's more of the sheer volume of residential property owners that would receive notice from us. But again, this approach doesn't prohibit them in the city. It still allows them to operate in the buffer areas, but it would prohibit them from expanding beyond where they currently are outside of those buffer areas.
The next location approach or zoning approach that we're offering today is a conditional use permit approach. This would allow STRs, and on the map you see here, you've got the yellow and the blue. The yellow are residential properties, residentially zoned properties that we know would require, a single-family residential property where we would require a CUP. The red dots are, of course, the pre-existing. And so if they're legal nonconforming, they'd continue to operate without the CUP until that use ceased. And then the blue properties are commercial properties that could possibly have some sort of either longstanding legal nonconforming residential use on them, or a multifamily type use that would allow for STRs in the properties with just our regulation and inspection program that we have now. So this is the blue and the yellow combined would be the areas where STRs could conceivably operate, with the yellow being those where you'd have to have a CUP approved to operate there. Again, a CUP would allow for conditions to be imposed. There'd be an individual application review of each of those with conditions considered based on the circumstances. It would allow for time limits to occur. It would not replace the inspection or registration that they'd have to do additionally, in addition to the CUP. And again, this would require significant noticing of all the single-family properties throughout the city. And our very, very bare minimum number there would be $25,000. And that's at just roughly slightly over 40,000 single-family homes in the city. So there would be, again, additional notices to owners that are off-site, the tenants in those properties, following all of those standards. So there would be another very significant noticing effort, like Philip was just mentioning in the previous slide.
Just another comment on this one. In addition to the broad notice, which is the same issue we would encounter with the Arlington model, this would probably be even a more broadly noticed proposal. This would involve every single family home owner and occupant in the city. There's the specter of the conditional use permits, and those are all run through P&Z and council. Council would have the final say. We don't know how many additional applications it would create, but it's likely it could create some additional zoning cases. If there's a time limit put on the CUPs, then when those are up for renewal, right now we have 170 in the city right now. If we had 170 more, or however many we might get, every so often those would have to be noticed. All of the red dots today would not have to get a CUP. They're legal non-conforming, and as long as they continue that use, they continue to be legal but non-conforming.
The last location restriction that we wanted to talk about is one that can be used in tandem with the other two zoning approaches we talked about, but that's limiting the number of STRs in a block face. So if you're on a block, you've got two sides of a block, and you've got a number of homes in that block. If we looked at limiting to a percentage the number of STRs that could operate in a block, we would look at, and many of the other cities that we looked at when we were studying this, limit between 10 and 25% if they have a block face limit like this. So we took samples of our most concentrated STR areas and thought, okay, well, what would that mean in our city? And so we sampled our areas, and there were between 25 to 30 homes in those blocks where there were already multiple STRs in a neighborhood or in a concentrated area. Fortunately, so far, not many on the same street, but those were the blocks we looked at. And then if we used these percentages that we're seeing, a 25% block face limitation would mean that there'd be no more than 8 allowed on that block face. If we went to 15%, there'd be no more than 5 allowed. At 10%, there'd be no more than 3 allowed. And so we looked at what we've seen common and defended in the past, and landed on these numbers here to propose examples to you. We're not recommending any one of these in particular. We kind of want feedback in regards to if we went with an amendment like this, what the council was comfortable with, and would adopt that into our ordinance. Yeah, Phil.
Just additional color commentary here. These are typical block faces. So I don't want, when we say no more than 5, that's if every block face is typical, and they're not. The key is the percentage of the block face that you could allow having an STR on. Shane, right now, are we aware of any blocks where we have more than one STR on the block face, or more than two? Is it-
We have a small handful where there are more than one STR on that block. The majority of them do not. We do have some where there are other types of rental properties in the block, but not an STR specifically.
I say that just to point out that this proposal probably wouldn't have a significant impact outside of how STRs have been registered today. We're not seeing a clustering there where we have 3, 4, and 5, and 8 STRs on a single block. We're just not seeing that. But this could be something that could be adopted to prevent increased concentration over what we have today.
And that adoption can be done more swiftly than our zoning processes. It would be something that we would include in the Chapter 8 amendment we would bring you back. And then, of course, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is something that we could adopt in addition to any zoning regulations that you choose from options A or B. This would be something that as staff receive the application, the administrative staff that reviews those and connects with field staff to approve them would look and do the measurements at that point. So because we know no block is typical, we would look at each individual block and try to discern at that point, okay, how many houses are on this block? Are there any currently registered STRs? What would this mean to that calculation? And we would apply that math at application. So to recap, we've gone through quite a bit of things. As far as adopting new regulations, we would require inspections. We would require off-street parking as far as the host rule and the posting goes. But again, there's the complication of us enforcing public parking areas. And then we would look at allowing a special exemption for the current 15% or so that are non-compliant with that standard to be approved to continue to operate through the Board of Adjustment or another special exemption vehicle that the council was comfortable with. We would continue to scrutinize our renewals for compliance and make sure that that's a tight compliance standard, and that we look both at what we're finding on site when we look at the inspection and then what the history of the property has been in the past year between the last renewal. We would prohibit more than one lease in an STR property at a time. We would require the floor plan submittal along with the fire protection standards. And then we'd look for your consensus on any of the location or zoning-based approaches, options A, B, or C that we just presented. Our next steps would be to adopt, to return to you as quickly as feasible with an ordinance to amend. We'd need to amend the fee resolution, of course, to make sure that anything we adopt is we're achieving cost recovery on. If there are zoning amendments that you recommend, those would need to go through the zoning process that Jocelyn and her team would undertake. We would need to message these changes to the STR operators and host platforms, the new requirements, fees, effective dates, those sorts of things. We would need to go through our process, through our budget process. We would look at onboarding new staff and amending the fees to cover those. The staff could be brought on board at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we expect that we'd be able to commence the inspections within a month or so of bringing the staff on board in November. With that, staff is available for questions and awaits your feedback on some of those options.
John.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Shane, for the presentation. Quick question on the item for prohibiting multiple leases per unit.
Yes.
The way I read this, it looks like that would effectively, there are some business models out there for some operators that this would effectively prohibit. Is that, such as pad split?
Yeah, if they're in an STR and they're currently renting out multiple leases through the site per bedroom, that would end those. If it's not an STR, if it's a property where, and oftentimes you see with the pad splits and the various things, that they rent longer than 30 days.
Yeah.
Then that wouldn't impact those, because this would apply only to STRs. But for the STRs where we can see through their ads that they're renting different individual rooms to different people and have multiple guests, if you will, in the one property, that would eliminate that.
Okay. And then, so the block face, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the block face definition is like, so say you've got, a street bounded by two cross streets, and you've got houses on the north side of the street and houses on the south side. The north side is a block face and the south side is a separate block face. Is that correct?
That's the way we were looking at that in this situation here. Now,
So
that
if
term
you
and the
had-
definitions there are up for discussion. If you would rather look at it as in a block, so that we're taking into consideration the math of both sides of the street.
Right.
That's one angle we sort of looked at and considered. Depending on your feedback, we could adopt the language in the ordinance we would return to you with to capture, and I'm going to look at my lawyer real quick and make sure I'm on track, my boss too, and make sure that either one of those options, if we say block, then we would look at both sides of the street. If we're talking about
Right.
block face, we would look at one side of the street of what we're looking at there.
Did you look, when you were looking at these location restrictions and looking to mitigate the risk of clustering, did you look at, rather than, block face or block or percentage of a block, just distance? Not having more than one within a certain distance from each other?
We did look at those a little bit. Go ahead.
Short answer, yes, we did.
Okay.
I think the city attorney may have some
feedback
on that.
Enough said. My preference would be to look at it as a block, as a whole block, not just the block face in that case. Looking at the three options, I would be in favor of the 10%, and then I would also be in favor of the CUP approach. I know that's a sizable amount of notice, to say the least, but I think in terms of the relief that our residents are asking us to provide them, I think that's what delivers it for the most people in the most reasonable way. So, thank you.
Luis.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I mean, a lot of things are phenomenal, a lot of creative thinking, and I appreciate that because, you've spent a lot of time trying to find solutions when you don't have the obvious tools. So that means a lot. And I just want to ask you, when it comes to those 170 short-term rentals that we currently have, you mentioned that maybe 15% of them would have trouble continuing to operate based on the parking or would need some exceptions.
Yes.
So when you add all the different measures absent the CUP, the Arlington model, and the, clustering, do you have some sense of maybe how many of them would be rendered potentially unviable by those additional inspection requirements, fees, et cetera, if you have any idea?
I think, well, I mean, we didn't look very closely at the existing for the other standards because they would be legal nonconforming. We would look at applying if they closed, we would then look at applying the current standard. So they would close only if they'd have to comply with the new rule only if they closed. Am I getting that?
Right, but that's for those three models. The other requirements, whenever they reapply for their license, they do have to meet
I
that,
see.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
those other three are all, the other regulations we talked about at the beginning are all ones that we're exceptionally confident that almost all properties would be able to comply with. They're all very reasonable operation standards. They're all code compliant standards now that when you construct a home, that you have to comply with these standards in most circumstances. There may be a handful that either have ADUs or garage conversions or something that we haven't found. We don't know what that number is until we actually get to the properties and start looking at them. So those would be ones where they couldn't continue to operate under that model and would need to either make adjustments not to use the accessory or unpermitted area, or stop the STR.
So to some extent, the inspection section is somewhat of a question mark where we don't really know, right, what we're going to find there.
Yeah, the inspect, because we have not performed inspections before. There's a little bit of an unknown with the inspections as to how many of these issues we're going to find when we visit the properties.
And then the other question when it comes to the three options, the Arlington philosophy, would there be any legal complications, or would it be possible to just leave it to the purple area and just notice everybody else and go with that? Would that be a possibility?
Can we
Yes.
respond in executive session
It's
on
fair
that
enough.
particular question? There are a few things, I mean, all of this, we'll let Shane finish and the other questions, but I think any legal questions, I would like to reserve
Okay.
those for executive session.
That's fine. And I guess, yeah, we'll discuss that then, in executive.
Adam.
Oh, thank you, yeah. In fact, I was going to ask KO's advice on that, but we can save those questions. So I guess I would just say that, I agree with approach C and then B, and making it as restrictive as possible. Thank you.
Just go ahead. Very quickly, yeah, as Justin was saying, when it comes to the given notices, I mean, that's what we have to do. But if citizens investigate what it is that we're doing, I don't think they're gonna be mad, I think most of it is gonna be really good, so.
Al. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Shane.
Sir.
Go back to the map that shows Irving and the red dots. You know, it's fascinating. If you take a look at the area that is blank, that's the Las Colinas Association, and it's deed restricted. But then I've got a question, because if you look right at the nexus of 161 and 114, you see those two dots?
Yes, sir.
I assume those are apartments, okay?
They are, yes.
And that's part of the quote-unquote Cowboys, et cetera, operation up there, right? And so it's pretty obvious.
Those are in an apartment complex, yes, sir.
Yes, of course. But then I'm interested in the two along 114, right, almost at the entrance to the airport. My assumption is that those were hotels that have been converted to apartments.
It's possible, I haven't,
I don't know how they could be short-term rentals.
yeah, it's been a little bit since I've looked at those two. I know that that's mostly hotels in that stretch there, so I can't speak right off the top of my head as to what the circumstances are of those two. But we'll check those, I'll get some information back to you here and let you know what those two are.
I'm only checking it since that's my district up there, so I thought I
Certainly.
would really find out what's going on. And then if you look at where the red dots are above 635, that's all Valley Ranch, which is a whole different development. So it says a lot about HOAs and the positive. Thank you.
Mark. One thing we've talked about at different times is a registry for guests. Like hotels, they're obligated, the guests have to do a register. Can we do that for these STRs too?
That is a standard that we've not seen in anybody's ordinance anywhere, so we haven't been able to find that it's been legally tested. And when we went through our standards, and that may be something more for closed session, it's something that there's some privacy legal concerns with the property owner relationship and information with the way that STRs operate and protect information generally. That we didn't consider in introducing that requirement, especially when we didn't see anyone else in our surveys requiring that activity.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that in the executive session too. And then, do you ever come across any issues like with ownership? Is there any issue with owners that, well, I'll ask about that one in the executive session too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dennis. Yeah, got a couple of curiosity questions. Number one, on your prohibited multiple leases.
Yes.
When they sign the lease, do they have to list the names of the people that's in that unit? Or is that just a general, somebody signs the lease and they don't say how many people's gonna be in it?
We've seen it done both ways, and there's also oral leases that are legal to engage in. So it's not required that the names be placed specifically on the lease. What we would look for in that circumstance is encountering people who identify to us that couple A or family A is living in room, and then we've been in properties where the rooms are literally numbered. In room 1, and family B and family A, who are in no relation, different stay period, different, don't know each other at all, are in a different room. We would look at that with this proposed language as violating the single lease standard.
So how do you really monitor that in-depthly as to, you could say you got a lease, but then they could sign another lease while this lease is still in effect. You never know it unless you can
Yeah,
monitor it.
It's entirely possible. It's similar to the struggle we have with our long-term residence properties where we have issues. Short of the people in the property informing us as to what's going on, it's an incredible challenge for us to be able to pinpoint exactly what the situation is. We do often get people admitting to what's going on, and we'll address those situations. But it's also possible that people would either sort of know what to say or be coached what to say, and misinform us in regards to what we're finding there.
Okay, and then my second question really is actually you, Chris, and I could have leaned over and asked you the question, but I want to make sure that if any other council members want to know. And, you know, the fees, not the fees, the cost for these 3 new employees. Chris, you got any idea what type of money we're looking to fund these 3 employees with all the cost?
Chris, I can maybe help there a little bit. I ran some initial, HR partnered with me to run some initial PCRs, some personnel request estimates. And it would roughly be just above $300,000 for the full package of what we're looking at regarding the 3 new employees, the benefits, other tweaks or changes we would need to make in regards to supervision to accomplish this. We baked all of that into, hey, if we remodeled the program and did this, what would it run? And it was just north of 300.
So would the fees cover 100% of that cost, or would you have to get other funding from within the general fund?
No, we would analyze that over the course of the spring here with the budget to ensure that the fees capture that cost. What we would do is we would take the estimated number on a conservative end of what we think are STRs that are out there that we have not found yet, combine those with what we've got now, so we have a good total, and then divide that simple math sort of across all of them to figure out, to cover the cost of the program, what would it cost to charge them. This is similar to what we do with our multifamily programs. And then we would escalate the fee to that number so that each year as we analyze that, if the numbers of STRs dropped and we need to spread that number broadly over more, then we would raise the fee. If the number of STRs went up and we didn't have to increase staffing, we'd look to make sure that that program would be healthy each year like we do with our multifamily team. As far as a guess as to what that might be, I don't want to get pinned down to a number right now, but we've run some rough estimates. And if we have 400 STRs in Irving, because we think there are many in our apartment complexes that we haven't been able to chase down and register yet, and we divided the program cost over that, the number would come in somewhere above 700 and below 900 a year for an STR. That is not, it's not the highest in DFW. The city of Rowlett charges $2,000 a year for their STR registration, but it is higher than many.
David. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane. A few things, I think as Councilman Zapata mentioned, that homeowners associations have a lot more control too. So I'm not sure if there's model language that we can help them with in the HOAs or education for our HOAs around the city to let them kind of police these as well on top of whatever ordinance the city does. Number 2, to Councilman Block's question, these a lot of the citizens that I've talked to that have complained is not solely about the short-term rentals, but the split pads, the house next door with 4, 5, 6 people who have no idea who they are. They're all separate individuals. And these rentals are typically 6 months leases or more. And that's one of the issues I'd like to see us tackle is a master lease, single lease on those houses if they want, the oral agreements between the other leases, but somewhere where we can control 6 disparate people. And I have college-age kids. They all live with each other, and we lease houses, and Dad gets to guarantee them. But, these things where we're looking at college-age kids or flight attendants, there's a lot of different groups that get together and lease out a space. But I think what we're seeing in our neighborhoods and trying to protect our neighborhoods is these split pads, these other 6-month type leases. So that would be the next big tackle that I'd like to see us do as a city and really take a strong look at that along with what we're doing here.
Any other questions? Philip?
Just to respond to Councilman Pfaff's question, that's an issue we had some discussion at length about, and perhaps might be some information provided by the city attorney's office in closed session on that very issue.
Shane, do you know what we're talking about doing based on all this conversation?
I believe so, sir. Yes, we're looking at B and C and everything we spoke about before that.
All right. Mark, did you have something else you were going to? We can put this on the list. We're probably going to executive session on a couple others, so we can, KO, if you do, when we go in there, we'll talk a little more detail about it as well. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to the regular agenda. We'll get through this pretty good. Items number 2 and 3 are the work session and the regular meetings for February 12th. Item number 4, we discussed earlier about the Grand Prairie, annexation of land and de-annexation. Item number 5 is amending ordinance number 2025-11-167, providing budget adjustment number 3 to the 2025-2026 fiscal year budget. Item number 6 is approving the Sixth Amendment of the amended and restated interlocal agreement between the City of Irving and Dallas County Utility Reclamation District concerning accelerated waterway maintenance projects, infrastructure, and other projects within the City of Irving's tax increment reinvestment zone, number 1. Item number 7 is awarding a contract to Venus Construction Company in the amount of $803,062.63 for Irving Boulevard street lighting project. I know a lot of people have been waiting on that one. Item number 8 is approving an economic development incentive agreement with Lift Fund, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $250,000 for the Small Business Interest Buy-Down Program. Item number 9 is approving an inter-economic incentive agreement between the City of Irving and the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1 and the 222 WLC owner LP in the amount not to exceed $20 million for improvements within the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1. Item number 10 through 20 are the bids. Are there any questions on the bids? Seeing none. Item number 21 is amending Section 17C-4B of Chapter 17C of the Irving Land Development Code related to amendments to the 2021 Incentive International Fire Code by adding Section 1208, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations of Chapter 12, Energy Systems, to the Fire Code. Item number 22 is considering a resolution allowing the exception to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs 1 mile, 3 mile rule for adapting reuse of commercial office construction to a multifamily structure located at 2520 West Irving Boulevard.
Excuse me, Mayor, can we
Adam.
talk about this one?
Sure. We have some questions on item number 22. Good afternoon.
Imelda Speck.
Hi, Melda, how are
Hi.
you doing? I guess I'm curious about how this project or this proposal would fit in with the strategic plan for that property. I know this is kind of a large question, but what I'm remembering is from our last meeting, we had that the dance hall case, right? And it seems like maybe we need a reexamination of the strategic use of that whole corridor or something like that. Like something's not getting started economically the way we wanted to. But yeah, maybe if you could just talk a little bit about this project and you know, the recommendation you would have on this one.
Well, if I can, I would like to update you, if you did not notice in the presentation that was part of your packet from the last time we spoke, they did update the site plan slightly, so I'll just go to that if that's fine. So we've talked about the LIHTC program and the application. But they have confirmed that they will be going through a zoning case because they will be needing to add an additional building in order to get to the number of units that they need to make the project feasible. So it will be an adaptive reuse of the current building with the new residential building added. This is that 1 mile buffer. So it will now be proposing 72 units and then also retaining a portion of the current commercial space. So it will technically be a mixed-use project now. So they will have some commercial space within the current building. Still targeting the 80% AMI with that 45-year affordability period. We've seen the unit and income mix, but just for time's sake, this was the aerial, or this is the aerial of the property, and this is what that new building, at least from an aerial perspective, would be placed on the site. In regards to the larger area, I would say that's a larger conversation. I know planning has future land use plans, or not plans, but has the future land use designation here of commercial. I don't know of a larger study or more specified study for that area specifically, but that could be something that we look at. But in regards to a TIF 1, I mean, this is along what we're trying to see to redevelop along that area, so we do want to see redevelopment in that sense. And then again, this is just their scoring.
The new multifamily would have to meet all of our new multifamily standards and request through zoning any variances they might ask for. So at this point, we don't know what that building's going to look like. As you know, our minimum height for a new multifamily structure is 8 stories. If they're not planning to do that and meet all of the other amenity requirements, they would have to request variances through zoning.
So the request tonight is just for the support of the application for LIHTC, is that correct?
Correct. So there are 2 resolutions this year. As we noted, this is the first resolution would be allowing an exception to the TDHC requirement of needing to be more than 1 mile away from a project that was awarded within the last 3 years serving the same population. They need to receive that resolution in order to apply this year. From the map and calculations, they are right at that 1 mile buffer, so they're asking for that resolution basically for a buffer of their application, if you will, because they're just, it looks to be about 20 feet outside of that. Then the second one would be for the resolution of support, which would give them the 17 points. And with these, with this, as it's very competitive, if they don't get the 17 points, they wouldn't be awarded. It's a very competitive process.
I do need to correct something I said. Because of Senate Bill 840, they don't have to go through a zoning case to build a new multifamily building there. If they want variances to our design standards, then they would have to. But as a matter of entitlement, they don't have to go through zoning to do multifamily and commercial anymore if they meet all of our requirements.
Adam, I think you bring up a good point. We kind of got the cart ahead of the horse here. Because if you give them the ability to have the credits, and then they come in and want variances to design guidelines, I mean, we kind of talked about this before we get ahead of ourselves, but I'm sorry, Al, you were next.
Was there somebody? Okay. Let me, I think, Philip, this is the one we've had discussion, Imelda, that no matter what we do on this item 22, item 23 is really still up to us as to whether we want to go and support or no objection and or 0. Am I correct? And in fact, their history has been not too positive about what they've been able to get done. So my question is really simple. Assuming no matter what we do on item 22, they're still going to be able to go forward per what I think you just said as to because of 840 and some of the other that they may be able to do. But I thought there was some kind of a heritage kind of designation on that on that building or that area, which
You're talking about
too clear what that is.
They are-
historical designation.
They are currently are seeking historical designation on the property. So if they receive that, they will basically be updating the outside to return it to its previous glory, if you will, as they'll be historically designated. That gives them 2 extra points on the application, but that just pertains more so to the look of the building on the historical designation
The
portion.
council has absolute discretion whether to give them either of these resolutions of support. If you vote no on 22 and 23, then they won't get the points in their application, which is, in our experience, makes it difficult to get funding without a resolution of support. It's not automatic, but it does make it difficult.
Well, you read my point. Thank you, Philip, because at the end of the day, you know, it's about them positioning themselves by garnering the points so that they can be higher in whatever the final state, I guess, decisions on hierarchy as to who gets what as far as going forward. I think I'm correct on that. But at this point, thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, so basically, if 22 is not passed, 23 can't happen. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. They need to have that resolution in to
Right.
be able to apply.
Right, because, because of the 1 mile buffer. So what they're asking is to allow them to build this even though it's within the 1 mile buffer. So that's something we need to take into consideration. Number 2, and Al, I'm not sure, but you talked about kind of a negative history with them. I'm not sure. They've only built, I think, 1 facility in our city.
Yeah, but that
And-
one we passed, okay, and it was a different, okay? I'm just giving you some history. That doesn't relevant to this. at this
Right, but I'm trying to find out what was the negative situation we had with them, because I don't remember that. Because we've only had 1 that they built.
Yes, because they didn't get clearance on the others.
What others are you talking about?
They had other applications.
I'm lost.
They have 1 Canova Palms, which is built. They had then their second proposed project was off of Story.
Right.
Received a resolution of support, but did not get the zoning, so then they could not accept the award. And that's where we got that's why the project at 400 South MacArthur was funded. The third application, which was approved last year, is Envoy 64, and that is the multifamily project off of 183, which they were awarded in 2025. And that's the one that's triggering the 1 mile radius. So that one isn't built yet, but that also received our Dallas County ARPA funds for the acquisition of that. So,
Thank you.
just for history.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, and I'd like to ask the question, how many multifamily products have been built south of 183 without some type of subsidy funding?
I'm not aware of any other ones.
Good question.
0. We thought we was gonna get 1 market rate development, and we found out that that's not happening. So at the end of the day, whether you like these products or not, because of the name, the actual structures are what's needed in South Irving, south of 183. We have got to figure out a way to get some decent multifamily products south of 183. A lot of citizens are always talking about, what are we gonna get in South Irving? How come we can't get this retail and that retail and that retail? And that's because you ain't got enough people in South Irving to get those type of amenities. So my point is simply, and I know the word multifamily and LaTeX is a bad word in this city, but I think we also as planners and council members need to understand, if we are going to provide housing, especially for a aging population, we have a lot of people who are, baby boomers and up, who are looking for places that they can afford. And these are the only way they're going to be able to afford these types of, structures, they're not going to be able to afford market rate rental in our city. So the very people who really need these the most are the ones who actually built this city. And so I want us to keep that in mind as we have this mindset that somehow these low-income housing tax credit products are something bad. Look at the one at MacArthur and 6th Street. That's a LIHTC product, and it looks very nice. So look beyond the, quote, Section 8 housing mentality and ask yourself, as a city, at some point south of 183, we're going to have to build something. And the other thing is, 840 kind of puts us in a bind. We have to be very careful going forward, if we don't take 840 into consideration as to what they can do without even coming to this council.
Okay, Adam, then Al.
Actually, this puts me, I think this one's a puzzling case for me at least, because it is additional net, units, multifamily rental units. It's high quality, the construction, the proposal, yeah. So this is, I think it, I trust the work that'll be done on it. But nevertheless, we still do have, a big ratio of renters to homeowners in the city. So I guess I'd like the city to be intentional about, integrating this project in a larger strategic vision for South Irving, like what Dennis was saying. So at this point, I don't know. I guess there's a strategic plan out there, but I don't know how. I guess I just don't know. Maybe I could have some more information on that. That's probably what I'm actually saying. So, anyhow, thank you. I'll stop talking about this now.
Al?
Okay, Dennis, I agree with you, but not at that location. It's real simple. Take a look at what we did, Mayor, when you pushed forward on our opportunity to have along Commercial and along Irving Boulevard to have the kind of, call it PUD, Development District, and yet this is right on that thoroughfare. And that is not a fit, period. I am fully in agreement that, yes, we need to have many more apartments because we have them all up in District 5 and 6, right, Mark? And we'd like to have you have them. But it's all about location and location. And we need to be really intentional that if we're going to have corridors that we're developing as commercial corridors, then that's what we put there, not apartments. Thank you.
John.
You got one vote, I got
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the work that these guys are doing up at the embassy place. I think that sort of project is the kind, when I see LIHTC proposals coming in, that's the kind I want to see. We have a lot of aging apartments in the city. Over half of our housing stock in the city is already apartments. My position is, since I get a say in whether tax money gets spent on developing apartments in Irving, when they come to us asking for that, my policy is redevelop. That's it. If you're asking to use tax money on developing apartments, redevelop. Take existing apartments that are substandard, redevelop those. On the subject of clustering, there's a good reason that the state requires us to give the go-ahead on clustering, so I can't really support that, this proposal to bypass that. But if we're looking for areas of the city that don't have a clustering problem, I would submit that District 3 has no LIHTC projects currently, and District 4 is about to lose their only one. So those would be the districts that I would suggest looking at. District 4, by the way, is the only district that has a positive single-family to multifamily unit ratio in the city. Those would be the ones I would suggest looking at. 5 certainly has more than its fair share of apartments. 6 has more than its fair share of light-tech apartments. 1 is right in the middle, 7 is about in the middle too. So that would be, that's my input on the clustering and distribution topic.
Mark?
So I think, so Adam's been, I think you're asking about the comprehensive plan for the area that's commercial, but I think the reason why it's not being presented as part of this case is because of Senate Bill 840. Is that right, Philip?
Yes, it's allowed by Senate Bill 840.
But as far as the city's comprehensive plan, this area is, this plot of land is designated commercial. So,
Okay.
Yeah, just,
I'm sorry. Go
you
ahead.
know, I will agree with everything that John said, except for, you know, the comments in District 4. I think that's one of the things about the character of my district. And, you know, I think we should be looking very carefully about where we build new multifamily, and there's plenty of stock that is going to need some, you know, renovations. In, you know, worst case scenario, we can just do like one big multifamily right in the middle of Hackberry right there, and just for all to enjoy. Just kidding. Yeah.
Okay. Item number 23 is a resolution considering request by OSDA Industries LLC, AZ Morse Development LLC, and Across LLC for local support for an application on the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs for adaptive reuse of commercial office building and construction of a new multifamily housing located at 2520. I think we've pretty well talked through both of these. If there's any other thing we'd like to talk about. Item number 24 and 25 are both dealing with the DART issue. Why don't we bypass that and get through our zoning cases, and then we can come back to that. We'll let you have a little more rest, Chris, before we.
I'll warm up the room, Chris. Yeah, there you go.
Good afternoon.
You ready? Good afternoon. Jocelyn Murphy, Director of Planning. We just have a few cases tonight, nothing too complex. Excuse me, our first case is was postponed from a couple weeks ago. It's a carport encroaching into the front yard setback. It's 1815 Durham Street. Excuse me. P&Z recommended approval 7-1. There was 1 letter in support and none in opposition. So here's the property on Durham Street. It's near Story Road. We did an analysis of the area, and there are some site plans, or I'm sorry, some carports in the area. There are 2 on this block face, but in looking at them, they're not in the front setback. There's one that's on the side of the house, and there's one that looks to be parallel with the front of the house. So there are none that are encroaching in the front setback as the request is today. So this is the site plan. The intended carport would be 18 by 21 feet. It would be 10 feet from the property line. The property does have the 30-foot established setback, with y'all are very familiar with by now. So therefore they are encroaching 20 feet into the required 30-foot setback. And picture of the property. They do have about 12 feet or so on the side of the house. When we were going through some of the carport considerations for the special exception, that was one of the thoughts, is can they get to the back of the house? And there does look like there's enough room on the side. I know that's not their intention, but there does seem to be some width, a typical driveway width on the side of the house. And just some pictures of the surrounding property. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, you did recommend adoption of this, correct? The recommendation?
Yeah, it's actually a variance, so we recommend, we found there's no hardship.
Okay.
I think there's a recommendation in our package.
Well, P&Z recommended it.
Yeah.
But staff
agree with
recommended,
P&Z.
yeah, didn't find
No,
hardship.
this is item 26?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's a recommendation at the end here.
It's a P&Z recommendation.
This is recommendation, the ordinance be adopted per the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think that may have been an oversight, Jocelyn. I think our finding is that there's no hardship. We don't make recommendations on variances. So that's something we need to probably just quality control miss.
I have a question.
Mark?
Do you know why the applicant wasn't here 2 weeks ago?
He just told us he had a conflict in his schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Al?
Am I correct in reading the document that PZ passed it 7-1? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Good enough for me.
All right, 27.
All right, this is 4201 North Beltline. Their zone CN, they're just requesting a variance to the required parking setback. So we have a kind of a hidden section that's hard to find. It's 33A that has certain setbacks for some of the larger roads and highways in the city. So that's what they're requesting today. Staff found no unnecessary hardship. P&Z recommended approval 8-0. No letters of opposition or support. So this is here at Beltline and Walnut Hill. It is north and adjacent to a CVS pharmacy. It's an area they've had to do some reclamation. I believe most of it's already been graded, but there is some floodplain adjacent to the property. So the request is just here. The Beltline Road, the adjacent setback would be 30 feet required, and they're wanting to be 10 feet for the parking. And again, this is in order to be able to push the entire development up a little bit because there is floodplain back in the area. It does connect up with the CVS. I believe there is an internal driveway connection. I believe there is. So there will be kind of the shared easements, shared driveways. And the surrounding properties. Be happy to answer any question.
Questions? David?
Yeah, it, just for my edification, but it says no unnecessary hardship is evident, but that is a floodplain area, right? Would that not qualify as a hardship?
They could still develop, without it, we think. They could adjust the size of the building or something to that effect.
Okay.
Just gives them more to sell. It's about making money. And it's kind of, I'll probably end up supporting it, but this is just an example of where you lay out a city and you try to put 30 or 40-foot setbacks on the road so you have some green space between roads and everybody decides that it's easier to, get the most out of the land, so then you eliminate it. So that's why when you go to Plano and Frisco and these other cities, you see these nice big green spaces along the roads, because here we just move the buildings up to them. All right, next one.
There, I got a question.
Go ahead, Al, sorry.
Hey, I guess this is for both, all our staff, but starting with you, Justin. And I think what was said, and maybe Philip said it, that you all don't take from a staff position yes or no, or support or not support because of this situation right now. Am I correct?
For variances for several years, we have not, so variances have a
For variance,
hardship measure.
I-
Right.
let me make it
For
clear.
variances, we just say whether there's a hardship or not. We still
Okay,
give
but that's like
recommendations
saying
for zoning. Mhm.
That there's no hardship, so you're positive about it, or you just can't do it? You can't say it?
We're saying it does, our recommendation, or not recommendation, but we're finding that it does not meet the hardship standard as determined by state
Okay,
law.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Next one.
The next two are companion cases at 103 East Pioneer. The first one is a comprehensive plan to change from business office to traditional neighborhood, which is our standard single-family neighborhood. Staff recommended approval. P&Z was approval 8-0, no opposition or support. So this is an odd lot. I'm not sure exactly the history of it, but there is a commercial building with a single-family structure right next to it. So this is involving simply the single-family structure in the yellow square. The area is currently business office that is being looked at. It's on the list of future land use amendments that you'll see here in the next few months. So that is, these areas, of course, are single-family, need to go to single-family. and the zoning is R6 adjacent. This current zoning for this property is CC, and this one here is an SP1. It was I believe it was an insurance office, but everything else is single family. And the zoning case, again, is CC Community Commercial going to R6 just for the property, just for the house. Staff approval, P&Z approval, and no opposition or support. On the site. And I'll show, here's a site plan. So it's an existing home. There is a covered carport. We've worked with them to make sure that the setbacks can be met when they draw their property line. They're going to plat it off. They do want to keep the house, maybe use it as a rental, but they do intend to keep the residential structure. So they're just wanting to sell it off separately and use it for what it is. And so this is the house they want to keep. This is the existing commercial. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
John, did you have a question?
Nope, she answered my question.
Okay. No other questions? Thank you.
Next two are, they're not companion cases, but they're very similar. They're 818 Bluebird is the first one. It is zoned R254 family residential, so it's an existing fourplex, requesting a conditional use permit for a residential assisted living facility. Staff recommends approval. P&Z was approval 7-1, no opposition or support. You do have a memo that has a floor plan of some construction changes that he plans for each of the fourplexes, so you can have an idea of what their intention is. That does apply to this case and the next case. So this one is the northern one on Bluebird. These are both almost identical in footprint, so they're, go to the site plan. So they're U-shaped. These two, the wings are one unit each, so 2 units total, and there's 2 units in this back space. They do have 6 existing parking spaces, which is an acceptable amount for the assisted living facility. There are certain CUP approval criteria, whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether it preserves the character of the neighborhood, any negative impact, and not detrimental to the public's health, safety, and welfare. You can also set time limits and various other landscaping and other requirements if you so choose inside the conditional use permit. So this is this property on Bluebird. And from what we understand, again, you have the floor plan of some of the changes they intend to do. They looks like they want to do some pretty significant adjustments. They do intend for one of the kitchens to become the primary kitchen, have one primary dining room within the entire structure, have some double occupancy bedrooms, some single occupancy bedrooms. They will be fully licensed and operate under the regulations of the state. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? John?
Thank you, Mayor. So for this one, do you know off the top of your head, so I know this particular unit backs up to Lively Park, to the walking trails?
I'll go back to the aerial.
I know that it has access to the park there. Do you know off the top of your head, I know some access points to the park are public access points and some are not. Do you know if this one is a public access or is it a private access?
Oh, I have no idea. There might be a fence back here. I don't know anything about the backyard, though.
Okay. Is there anything on the site plan that indicates anything about that?
Yeah.
Like access or
Just
shared
says,
access to the
yeah,
park?
they don't show a gate, but yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. Some of the residents may be mobile and they can use it, some of them may not be, it just depends.
Well, I'm mostly just curious about if it is currently public access, making sure that we retain that. If it's not, then that's not really an issue, but.
Yeah, they won't be replatting, I mean, they'll be getting permits for the interior remodel and then getting their state license.
Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, I mean, this is, we already have what is it, the men's domestic violence shelter nearby down there? Or there's some kind of shelter down there nearby, and that's been a good fit for that area. It's not very, it's a pretty quiet area, so, you know, this, I think this and the next one would be a good fit there. Although there's, assisted living is probably better because it's, there's a lot of traffic from the school, so probably not going to impact the residents for these facilities.
Any other questions? Next one.
Right. So the next one is basically a sister application at 811 Redbird. This is, I believe, 2 blocks south. Again, R25, wanting a conditional use permit for residential living facility. Approval from staff, P&Z approval 7-1, no opposition or support. So yeah, just 1 block south, exact same layout. The only difference is the configuration of their parking, and that's just because they have access in the rear. Again, still 4 units with the same footprint, same layout for the construction changes as you see. This is the front. I understand they don't intend to do any real changes to the front. They may say tonight whether they're going to paint or not, but most of the major changes will be on the inside. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Okay.
I think we're there. Thank you.
All right. And this last case, sorry, it's just a simple fence, special fence plan at 10504 Waters. This is in far, far north Irving. Just wanting to do a 8-foot wood fence within the required 15-foot side yard setback. The staff finds it does not meet the conditions for a variance. P&Z recommended approval of 5-3, no opposition or support. Usually in these situations, we do look and specifically want to see if we hear from the affected neighbor in the rear, and we did not. So here's the property. There is an alley between them and the house in the rear. They face the side, the house in the rear faces the front. So here's their site plan. So this is the area of the fence. The requirement is 15 feet, and they are wanting to make it 10 feet from the property line for a 5-foot variance. So this is the property. The fence, of course, will be here on the side. And another view, the fence will be over here on the side. And this is the property in the rear. There's an alley over here. This is the property that would be affected that we did not hear from. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Al.
Yeah, Justin, I assume that, first of all, the variance isn't that big, but there was a 5-3 vote. Can you put a little color on what that discussion was about? Because it seems to me what they're doing or requesting is really a privacy fence around their property, or at least specifically the pool area.
Yeah, they're wanting to, he explained at P&Z, just wanting to use a little bit more of their property, more room for their kids to play. The P&Z commissioners, if I remember correctly, they really didn't give a reason per se for it, but I think it was often they don't like the fences on the side just because they're afraid of the encroachment and the visibility of the home in the rear.
Okay, thank you.
Mark.
Well, yeah, I think that the ordinance requirements are there because, for one thing, to give for the aesthetic of the neighborhood. And if an 8-foot high fence that close to the street really, I think, is not in line with the look of that neighborhood. And so I didn't see a good reason to support the case.
Any other questions? All right.
All right, that's my last case. Thank you.
Chris, you ready for the marathon? Do you want to take a?
Oh, we can just all this. That's good. Don't need a formal one.
Okay.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break, Mayor?
We're gonna take a 5-minute break, I guess, Chris, while you warm up.
Elite winter sport athletes searching for speed. How fast are you going?
I don't know.
And leaving it all on the ice.
And I almost cried.
No, not the Winter Olympics in Milan. We're talking about Frostfest at Levy Event Plaza.
I won't go!
You were going fast, man. You were like going faster in the car, right?
Yes, I think.
Athletes like Santiago and Sean have trained for this since last month.
I also did it when the Arctic blast happened.
Yeah? So you guys are like pros at this now.
Uh-huh.
These young competitors test their abilities in a number of athletic endeavors, like mountain climbing, bowling, bopping penguins, tackling fake trees, and putting fake snow on your opponent's head.
They don't have to be in front of a screen, you know, that's a main thing for parents, so this is a pretty great event to come to.
Frosty fun, and perhaps the training ground for the next Jack Hughes or Michaela Schifrin. Robert Cheek for Irving Spotlight.
One of the many fun and free programs the libraries host are the unique puppet shows. Lay Theater Marionette makes a visit to West Irving Library to present Silly Strings, a comical variety show the whole family can enjoy.
We have the Theater de Marionette. They're coming to do a puppet performance for the kids here.
Today we are going to be seeing what is called our variety show. There's things that you know from pop culture, there's trick puppets in the show, and there's familiar faces and different characters that younger and older audiences would be familiar with. So there's something for everybody, so that's what you get when you have a variety show such as Silly Strings.
Because I'm presuming that I could be kind of human if I only had a heart.
Fun thing with this kind of show, it's a cabaret show, so we are a very short string marionettes, so we get to interact with the guests.
We had a great opportunity that they were able to come actually to all three branches of Irving, but one of the main reasons we really wanted them to come is to show the kids this really beautiful less seen art. So it's really important to show them like the puppets, which is something that we don't see as much of, and so it's kind of a cool, rare experience for them. Live theater is so important because it's a whole other medium of an artistic experience. It's a new way to see these stories put to life for them. So it's really great that we're able to do that at the library and to give them another avenue of seeing it for free.
The first time I saw a puppet show was watching my boss now, who I get to perform with. I watched a production of The Little Mermaid, and I was in the chairs with the kids just like, move out of, like, move out of, let me watch, yeah. So it's fun.
Every month, the library has new, different free programs. They're always free for people to come in, and over spring break, we're doing programs all week. We've got a bubble truck and a circus performance, so it's just really great to have all these different, really diverse experiences for kids.
The laughs continue with the new sci-fi comedy Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die.
Thanks. All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Chris Hillman, City Manager, here to talk about the two DART items that you have on your agenda for this evening. The first one is a discussion about the ILA that the DART board passed last Friday, as well as a second item that's on your agenda for you as a council to consider the rescinding or the canceling of the election that you already have authorized for the residents to consider, and you did that last November. We have a couple of slides and discussion points to help provide some context for this discussion. We'll be walking through some of the history of what the conversations have been between all the member cities and DART over the last 5 months, as well as some key components of the ILA that you will have, again, in consideration for tonight's meeting. The discussion, as I just mentioned, talking about the decision to call the election, the negotiations that we've had amongst all the different parties, some deadlines that we have coming up, a recommendation, we'll talk through some questions, and we'll also get into the ILA. Last November, you as a council put forward and passed an ordinance calling for an election for the voters to determine if they still wanted to stay in the DART system. This is an opportunity that comes up for member cities every 6 years per statute. We as a city in Irving have been talking with DART about several discussion points over the last 5 months in earnest, but I would respectfully submit we've been talking about a number of these issues for probably about the last 5 years. As you know, Mayor Stouffer is our DART board representative and has been working and living this discussion for not only the last 5 years, but probably for the last decade at least. And Mayor, I don't want to take anything away from you, and I know some of the comments that you're going to be having, but if you want some good context and commentary on a number of discussions that have gone on for many, many years, Mayor Stouffer can be a very helpful resource on those discussions. In particular, and our main focus area has been as a city, centered around the concept that for the dollars that our residents have authorized to be sent to DART from our sales tax, our 1 cent sales tax, the overarching question has been over the last several years is, are our residents receiving a return on investment for those dollars being invested into the DART system? That is a very broad question. It's an important question, but it's a very broad question. And how do you measure that? How do you analyze that? This started a number of years ago, about 2, maybe even 3 sessions ago at the legislative side, where as member cities, we were asking DART to provide some sort of structure and analysis of expenses or value for the cities. Again, that value proposition is one that is very difficult to define because a value proposition for Irving may be different than another member city's value proposition, whether that be Plano or Dallas or one of the park cities. Each city is going to have different variables of how they would assess that value proposition. I've always put forward the idea that, simply stated, for Irving, our value proposition, to be perfectly frank, is butts and seats. We want people using the system. We're investing heavily as a city. Our residents are investing heavily with their investment of the 1 cent. Our goal would be to have that system be well used to ensure that that investment of dollars is being appropriately made to provide the services that our residents are looking for. We would love to see buses and trains very full, and as I've somewhat facetiously said, we would love to have arms and legs hanging out the windows of every bus and every train, because that way we would know that the system is being used as extensively as possible. We've had those discussions again for a number of years. We have worked with DART through a cost allocation study that Ernst & Young did a couple of years ago. That is not a value proposition study, because again, that value-based judgment is just that, it's a judgment. But at least one area we could look at is how were the expenses of the system being allocated out to each of the different member cities. That's a challenging effort in and of itself. DART hired Ernst & Young to do an assessment. That assessment was completed again a couple years ago. And that assessment showed that different cities were either going to be donor or donee cities, meaning that some cities' investment of sales tax would be higher as a donor city than what the assignment of expense was in any particular year. And Ernst & Young took a snapshot of one particular moment in time. Here's what those expenses are, and here's what that allocation of sales tax is from each of those different cities. There were also donee cities where cities were allocated more in expense allocation relative to the sales tax contributions that came in from that city. So you had the donor, donee. The study itself, I believe, provides some broad context. I think it had a number of areas that it was not simply able to address that would provide a true holistic and completely accurate picture of that, but I believe that helped start some of these discussions of how do we begin to address and to ensure that all 13 member cities' investment into the DART system is receiving some kind of return that they feel is addressing that value statement that I know many cities, including Irving again, are looking for. More recently, over the last 5 months, as conversations continued to occur and more questions were coming up, the NTC, which is the North Texas Commission, and COG, which is our Council of Governments for our region, pulled together in an effort to try and help bring together a solution amongst all the member cities in DART, pulled together the mayors and the city managers of all 13 member cities to try and come up with a solution. There were conversations at the time that there may be votes by certain member city councils to move forward with an election. As you know, there are 6 cities now that have done that, several which we'll give an update here in a second have made different assessments now based upon some of the information that we're going to be talking to you about here. Plano in particular and Farmers Branch in particular. We'll be getting to that update in a second. But as we were looking at that value statement, in addition to the service levels, the governance model, and the finance model, questions arose of where are we at as a city. Again, you as a council called the election in an effort to ensure that all 13 member cities in DART were at the table talking about all this. The NTC and the COG pulled together the mayors and city managers to talk about really the 3 main components and 3 main issues that I think this all boiled down to, and that's the governance model, the finance model, and the service model that DART is currently operating under. Those discussions began in September. I want to do a shout out and a thank you to the NTC and to Chris Wallace there and to COG with Todd and Michael and TJ to help facilitate those meetings. I do believe that they were very helpful in allowing for a forum for the member cities to talk about their thoughts and their discussion points, for DART to be able to respond to some of those discussion points and to figure out a way to come to some solutions and some agreements that all the cities could begin to gather around as a center point of compromise and discussion and some movement forward as we continue to find ways to ensure that DART is as successful as possible. I believe all 13 member cities, just being a part of an organization, we want to ensure that DART is very successful. And again, we feel that in order for DART to be successful, we need users using the system. We want our residents using the system. We want them to take advantage of the investment that is being made. With that, as part of DART's budget for the current fiscal year, for fiscal year 26, some of the concerns that the city of Irving had was DART cut 2 of our bus routes, specifically the 225 and the 255. That was a 29%, almost a 30% reduction of our bus service. That's 2 of our 7 routes. It also cut the number of rail stations connected by bus by 38%. So right now, 3 of our 8 rail stations have direct bus service. The other 5 do not. So not having that feeder system from the buses over to the rail to help ensure that there's a robust movement and service opportunity for our riders and our residents was something that was a definite concern for the city. Irving residents are investing more each year annually. For fiscal year 25, we were about a $115 million investment. Since 1983, when Irving joined DART, the city has invested over $2 billion. However, not during that time, but since 2013, what we have seen is ridership decreasing from its high in about 2013. Back in 2013, ridership was in the low 70 millions. It was going down in those ensuing years, and then we had the COVID pandemic hit. There was obviously a precipitous drop in ridership, understandably so, with the COVID pandemic. in 2020. DART ridership has been moving up since that low of the COVID pandemic. It was able to exceed the pre-pandemic level of 2019, I believe a year or two back. However, the ridership overall is still in the mid to high 50s, which is significantly lower than where it was back in 2013. Concomitantly, in that same period of time, while there's been a 32% overall decrease in ridership from 2013 to 2023, our sales tax contributions from our residents has increased 106%. So what we're seeing is an increase in sales tax contributions going up, ridership going down, and now service, especially in the 2026 fiscal year, being reduced by the DART board. Our own internal surveys have shown that ridership of our residents is not as high as what we would hope. About 1% of our residents use it on a daily basis. It's a little bit of a higher of a number for those that use it monthly or quarterly or several times a year. Some of our residents will use it once a year to go to the fair, or they may use it a couple times a year to go to a basketball game. Some of them rely heavily on the DART system on a daily basis. So the challenge and the balance is always going to be for our residents that rely and need DART to help move them to their destinations each and every day, for them to be able to be successful in their lives. DART is very important for them. We want to ensure as a city that they have those transportation solutions for them to be able to live their lives. We also want to balance the fact that we don't have enough ridership. So our concerns are ridership is not high, and we want to make sure that the residents that are using it, that need to use it, that rely upon it, have a clean, safe, efficient, reliable, and functional service. Again, in fall 2025, in September, when the COG and the NTC pulled together all the cities, we had a goal to look at, again, the service model, the governance model, and the finance model. All 13 member cities were in attendance. We really appreciate the collaboration of all the mayors and the managers that were there in attendance, not only at that first meeting, but with all the meetings that we've had since, to help ensure that things moved through in terms of discussions and looking at data and analysis. A working group of city managers was created. There were 6 of us, and specifically there were 3 what we called resolution cities and 3 non-resolution cities. By resolution cities, what we are defining is there were, Irving being one of them, a number of cities that passed a resolution requesting 25% of the funds that DART receives be returned back to the cities. There were other cities that did not request that. So that working group was constructed to have 3 city managers from resolution cities and 3 city managers from non-resolution cities. It also included DART leadership, and each and every one of those meetings were conducted and helped put together by the NTC and by the Regional Transportation Council. And they helped facilitate each one of those meetings. Specifically, our efforts in this process, again, our goal is to ensure that we have a very successful mass transit system. We want riders using the system. So we put together, specifically after you as a council called the election in November, we specifically put together letters. The mayor sent it over to the chair, Chairman Randall Bryant, identifying and specifically listing our concerns and asking for a number of different discussion points that we would like to have with DART relative to our thoughts on what we would look to in terms of changes for us to look at canceling or rescinding that election that you as a council approved back in November. We had direct meetings with leadership. The mayor and I met with the chairman, with Nadine. We met with other mayors and managers talking about what was important for us, why those issues and focus areas were important to us, and we listened and understood from the other cities and from DART what was important for them as well. We had a working group subcommittee on governance. We had a working group subcommittee as well on finance. And we modeled different things from a governance perspective on what would work and what not, and what would not work. As you know, 2 meetings ago, you as a council adopted a resolution of support for a governance model, which we'll run through here again real fast for our residents, that we feel would be an important change to the governance structure of DART. We also had additional discussions with, again, COG and RTC staff, bilateral talks with the peer cities, briefings with legislators and state agencies. We met with a lot of legislators, senators, other representatives as they were asking for updates. A number of them wanted to be involved to help ensure that the discussions were productive and fruitful, and ensuring that they knew, that we knew that we had legislative support. We also looked at, from the city of Irving, as the council decided to move forward with the election, if that election were to move forward, and if the voters were to approve of removing the city out of DART, we would still need to ensure that there would be mass transit solutions available for our residents, especially from an intra-city service perspective, being able to make sure residents get to their doctors, their dialysis, to work, to the grocery store, to wherever they needed to go. Paratransit was also important. There are laws requiring that type of service. So we were ensuring that we were exploring those options and being able to have a system stood up and ready to be able to be implemented the moment that the DART service would end, if that vote were to be approved by our residents, which would be immediate after the canvassing of the election. Again, as we talked about, the 3 pillars of our focus areas were governance, funding, and service. On the governance side, it says resolve there, which is true, but is not implemented as yet. The only way to change the governance structure is to make a change at the legislature through legislation. And that cannot occur until we have our next session next year. However, what was important was that as many member cities as possible, along with what I felt was important from the DART board, to have resolutions that would support a governance structure. So as we went down to the legislature this next session, we all would be going and having the same statements of support, that we'd be all looking at the same structure. Going to the legislature with different ideas and different concepts is not a successful way to get legislation passed. So therefore, having a unified voice and what the governance structure change we would be looking at was very important. I believe that we have that. We had some core principles that we felt were important to ensure that that governance structure would be representative of the important focus areas that we had, along with the other member cities. We felt it was very important for every member city to have a full seat at the table. Right now, that is not the case. Some of the smaller cities have partial shared seats that they share with 1, 2, maybe 3 other cities. We felt that if a city were a member, they should have a full and complete seat on the board. No single city should have a majority. Right now, the city of Dallas has a majority of that. The Dallas vote share, per Dallas's perspective, and I can understand from a proportionality perspective, they would want to ensure that they still had a proper and representative proportional share of the votes. So the Dallas Council established a range of somewhere between 40 and 50%, and they also wanted to have at least 7 seats. This was, Mayor and Council, the chart that we showed you when you passed the resolution. Again, a little bit of an eye test up here, but you have this in your packet as well. You can see the 2025 board seats, what that apportionment is. You can see the partial seats and how that was working with the current 15 board members. Our first crack from the working group set up a structure of 20 total seats. It would have 5 for Dallas. Each city, again, would have a full seat. You can see the proportional percentage of votes. You can see a challenge down there. It adds up to 104%. I know a lot of us like that in school and we get some extra credit. It doesn't work that way when you have voting board members. You need to have 100%. So we knew we needed to make some tweaks and changes. But then we received some feedback from the Dallas City Council, specifically from their Transportation Committee group, where they set out certain parameters of what they, as the City of Dallas, felt were important for them. From that feedback, we in Irving put together a proposal incorporating that Dallas feedback. Dallas's feedback was very important to us. We wanted to ensure that Dallas was proportionally and properly represented. They are the city that has, I think, an important voice in this governance model. And so we put together a proposal that you can see there called the Irving proposal in the voteway, where we still kept it at 20 seats. We moved it up to the 7 seats, which they thought was important for them. It was still at 43.75%, which was in between that 40 and 50%. And that added up to an appropriate 100%. Dallas took that model, our model, tweaked it slightly, made some changes, and that's where you then see the Dallas change going over to the 7 votes, each city having a vote, but that proportional share changing slightly, and we have 22 total seats. And the Dallas proportional vote weights, as you can see there, Dallas would be at 45%. Through additional conversations with their council, that's where they wanted to be. They wanted to be at 45, so they split that difference between 40% and 50%. In Irving, I felt that as a city manager, I could recommend that to you as a council. I believe that, although it didn't address every principle and concept that we were looking for, we felt that it was important enough to accept and move forward with those changes because it addressed the majority of our focus points that we were looking at as a city. It did not address some of the focus points of other cities. We had originally proposed and thought that not only having 1 seat but 1 full vote was important. That 1 full vote from a mathematical perspective and not having a too large a board perspective simply did not provide for an adequate approach. So therefore, we stepped away from that 1 full vote for every city. Some cities, especially the smaller cities, felt that having not only the 1 full seat, but the 1 full vote was also important. But that 1 full vote was taken off. Again, you have passed this resolution in support of this governance model. You can see how the proportional shares play with the proportional share of population and with the sales tax contributions. Although not perfectly accurate, it is broadly representative and proportional for each city's proportionate vote on the governance board to what they contribute in sales tax and or what their population is to the total population. On finance and funding, as we were working together as a working group, the concept of X plus Y plus Z, going back to our good high school algebra days, was put forward where the $1 of contribution that each city provides to DART could be broken up into 3 different components. Again, X, Y, and Z. X would have been the contribution for intercity regional services. This is what DART is really built on. This is the regional system itself. In order to have a regional transportation system, you're going to have services that cross city lines. These are going to be your commuter rails, your light rails. These are going to be your commuter bus routes as well that cross different cities. That full cost would be X. Then you had Y, which would be very city-specific intra-city services. Z would then be the difference between the dollar contribution and what X and Y added up to. And that Z would be what would be returned back to the city. The solution that you have in front of you from a finance model, which is what the ILA will be addressing, is based upon this concept that there would be dollars coming back to the city based upon what that valuation of intra-city services are. What we learned from that study, and DART brought in a consultant to look at what X, Y, and Z would be. X, that regional component, was estimated to be about 80 to 86%, depending on which components and which actual transportation solutions you plugged in or didn't plug into that formula, would be about 80 to 86%. So of all of DART's cost and all of their services, about 80 to 86%, based upon the definition that the city managers had come up with, would be considered regional in their cost and in their allocation. The other 14 to 20% would then be the local. What you have in front of you is an ILA, which again we'll be getting to in a second, does not get up to that full 14 to 20%. That doesn't also represent the 25% that you as a council pass that you would be looking for in terms of resolution back from DART. So right now, we do not have that 25%. We do not have the 14 or the 20%, again, depending on which components you put in there. But we will be receiving, if you approve the ILA, 10% back over the next 6 years from DART, with some assistance over to DART from the RTC and COG. Those dollars are what we call General Mobility Program dollars, GMP dollars. Now, what does that mean? That means that in the statute authorizing DART, the sales tax dollars collected by DART go straight to DART, and they can only be used for general mobility purposes. So if those dollars are redistributed back to the cities by DART, they can only be used for general mobility purposes. They can't be used to build parks. They can't be used to pay for fire or police. They can only be used for general mobility purposes. We've received GMP dollars in the past from DART. Most recently, about 2 years ago, the city received about $25 million in GMP dollars back, and we use those for general mobility purposes for different projects, from streets, et cetera, to help ensure that DART services would be successful as well. The ILA itself is addressing the finance model. So again, we have the governance model. This is now looking at the finance model. DART's proposal is what you see here on this chart, that in year one of a 6-year ILA agreement, and an ILA is an interlocal agreement, in the first year, DART would return back to all member cities 5% of the sales tax that is collected by the cities through DART. They have already budgeted for that. That is in their budget now. Now, the original concept was that those dollars would be going back to the donor cities, but that has been set aside, and that 5% under the ILA would be going back to all cities based upon their sales tax contributions. That would be the first year. The second year, that 5% would be increased by 0.5% to go up to 5.5%, with a match of RTC dollars at 0.5% as well. You can then follow that process where each year DART would then increase its contribution back to the cities in GMP dollars another 0.5% each year, until you get up to 7.5% with a concomitant match of the RTC dollars that the RTC would be sending over to DART, going from 0.5% to 1%, 1.5%, for a total of 2.5% of the RTC dollars being used, the 7.5% of the DART dollars to be used, which then comes to a total of 10%. Year one and year two, which we'll get to in a second, are known. Years 3, 4, 5, and 6 are estimates right now because we just don't know what the sales tax collections will be. But the total estimated for DART is going to be $360 million of dollars back, GMP dollars back to the member cities. The $75 million that was passed by the COG 2 weeks ago, for a total of about $435 million. This is just a graphical showing of what that chart is. You can see DART's contributions in the blue, and then how RTC would be layered on top of that as a match up until fiscal year 31 in year 6 of the ILA. This is Irving specific on slide number 13. You see year 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. These are 2-year lookbacks. That's why we know for fiscal year 2026, that is taking the fiscal year 2024 sales tax collections. DART knows what that is. We know what that is. Here are the dollars that were collected. That's what would be returned at that 5%. We also know what fiscal year 2025 also produced. That would be then the percentage applied. The percentage applied would be to that number for fiscal year 27. What we don't know yet is obviously for fiscal year 28 through 31. Fiscal year 28 would be based upon what is being collected now during fiscal year 26. So the estimate of what Irving would receive would be a little over $54 million. Again, the first 2 years, the 5.1 million and the 6.8-ish million, we already know, we know what those numbers are, and that's what we would be receiving. But right now, under the ILA discussion and proposal, the city of Irving would be receiving over the next 6 years approximately $55 million in GMP dollars from DART. And again, graphically, how you can see that spread out over the next 6 years. The promised funding is again from DART plus RTC for a total of 10%. That doesn't mean that we're still not looking to try and get up to that 25% that you as a council had passed a resolution on, that a number of the other cities as well were very focused in on. And there will be continued efforts to try and secure the additional dollars. For example, there is a discussion going on, and Dennis is a part of all these discussions as a member of the RTC, on how through Transit 2.0, a discussion of regionalizing the regional rail components, not only of DART, but of the other transit agencies within the DFW area. For DART, that would specifically be the TRE line, which runs through Irving here, as well as the new Silver Line, which runs through the northern part of the DFW Metroplex, through the member cities up through there. There's also a discussion as well of some potential dollars through registration fees on the autos or other revenue at another 10%. That would then get us up to that 25%. But right now, there are no guarantees that either the regional rail, Transit 2.0, or other revenue sources would be coming in. So the ILA does not count on those relative to our agreement with DART. It is based on that 10%. But we'd be continuing to look to try and secure additional revenues to DART where those additional dollars would be able to come back to the city. Dennis.
Yeah, on the auto registration, isn't that for cities that are non-DART cities?
There have been discussions on both sides of that. There have been discussions on for cities or counties that are not in a transit system having a registration fee in addition on their automobiles to what they're paying for not being a member, but then there's also been discussions of just having a complete fee on all autos, whether you're a member city or not a member city. So there's been discussions on both. There has not been a determination, I don't feel, as to one direction or another. Again, our focus areas on the service side. So again, we've addressed the governance side. You have an ILA in front of you on the finance model. On the service model, we feel that the service model is very particular to each member city. In Irving, our goal is, again, we just want to increase DART usage and DART ridership. We also want to improve the public safety and the cleanliness. I think there have been some significant improvements on the system from a safety and a cleanliness perspective. We really appreciate DART's efforts on that. We also want to ensure that as DART looks at modifying or changing current services or providing for new services, that they work very closely with the member cities to ensure that there is meaningful input from us in how those service changes should be made. And we also want to ensure that DART follows its own policies relative to discussions of changes, especially related to reductions in service. We feel that this last go-around, especially with one of our bus routes, that policy simply was not followed. And we would like to ensure that that policy is. Specifically for Irving, we had asked and requested that the 225 and the 255 be put back into service. That is not part of the ILA that you have in front of you. It is not. Now, come to a thought there here in a second. We also had requested an urban circulator relative to our service. That is not part of the ILA that we have with DART that's in front of you. And we also want to have continued conversations about GoLink and making some changes there. DART has made some changes, and I feel some improvements. On the GoLink side, previously there were so many zones, it was very difficult for passengers to move across the city because you are not allowed to go from zone to zone in GoLink. Our goal is to try and reduce the number of GoLink zones. We think it'd be great to have one, maybe two. DART is continuing to make modifications, and we want to continue to have those conversations. That is not part of the ILA. What I would propose is to you as a council that if you decide to move forward with this ILA and we work on the 225, the 255, and that circulator, the mayor can provide more input on this. Right now, there are no immediate plans by DART to restore the 255 or the 225. Again, it was the DART board that made that determination to remove those routes. That would have to be part of, I believe, Mayor, a fiscal year process. So
Yeah.
for at least the next this part of the fiscal year, that would not be in place, Mayor.
I think the thing we have to follow up on there, Chris, is that when they make a decision to remove a route or things of that nature, they have to say, they basically stated that they would have alternative sources of mobility available for those that would no longer have that route. So I think what we really need to do is get, and this is where my frustration lies, because I could never get them to say, look, if you got 700 people or 500, whatever the number is, 500 people riding 2 buses, and now you're going to take that route away, but you're going to provide an alternative source to utilize. What is that, and how do they take advantage of it? I mean, is it GoLink? Is it microbus? What is it? And how do they keep track of the fact that you had 500 riders and now you don't have, how many of them you're going to keep? And so I think what we need to do there is, we know we have one area where there's a much need because of a program that's going on that's working with housing of people. And so I think what we need to do with the council's permission, what I would recommend that we do and send a letter to DART is and say, okay, you've taken this route. You said there were alternate modes of transportation. What are they, and how are they going to be utilized? Because to me, while I would entertain the idea of spending some of the dollars we get to try to do some of this stuff, if they're responsible really to make sure that they do it. So I'd like to put them under the finger a little bit and make them available. And Dennis, I know you're know the entity groups that are working in placing people. Maybe have a direct contact with a DART representative in charge of that process of either microtransit or GoLink, and coming up with a direct way for those individuals to make that happen. Because if you have one area that people are utilizing and you got 20 people there and they need to go 20 different places, we need to figure out how that can be accomplished. So I know that's one of the big challenges. That takes care of the ones we know about. It's unfortunate that there wasn't a way that we were kept track of those that were riding it regularly to see if there was something we could have provided for them. If GoLink is the suggestion, then there should have been a piece of paper that says 222 and 225 will be eliminated. GoLink will take over. Here's the number that you can call. Here's the information you need. If you need someone to come out to your organization or group, here's the number to call so that they can explain it to you. If that's something like that would have been available, it would have saved a lot of aggravation for those individuals who don't know what to do. So, Chris, before, I think we need to put a little pressure on DART to, since when they go through all this, they go through a plan of when they're going to add a route or we're going to take away a route. They've got a whole rigmarole that the Transportation Commission, state or federal state requires, if the Transportation Committee entity to do. And so there's notification on 2 or 3 different modes, and then there's months of this and months of that, and then there's public hearings and things of that nature. And then there's supposed to be a 2-year time frame that you give the operation an opportunity to either be productive or not, which these were not given that opportunity. So I think there's a lot of missteps here that we need to go back and say, how do we look at this from a different perspective in that situation? Especially because I believe if we're going to try to bring it back, we're going to have to go through that same process where it's advertised for a month or 2 at a time, and then there's public hearings and things of that nature. You could be 4 to 6 months, maybe even a year before you really get to the bottom line on that. So I think regardless of what we do today, I think we should put together a letter to ask for that to be done and meet with the entity groups that are challenged by this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I actually, on behalf of myself, actually wrote Chair Bryant. I sent him an email and requesting him to look at speeding up the reinstatement of the 255 and the 225. And I shared with him, some of the things that have been shared with me with those nonprofits who are directly affected, because some of them, like the Table of Irving, Life Change Housing, and the City of Irving have been putting homeless people in the Meadowbrook apartments. And there was a dart stop right in front of the Meadowbrook apartments, and they was very dependent upon that dart stop. Now, a lot of them, and I've had people say some of them have already lost their jobs because they have no way for transportation. So, yeah, it is imperative that we figure out some way to, especially the 225, get it back in service. And to Mayor, what you said, and for those that was at the UD meeting, that question actually was asked. And their answer was, in other words, the question was asked, why wasn't there notice given to everybody? And their question was, well, they were giving notice to the people who was riding the buses, pretty much. But one of the concerns I have is that, what about communication to our staff? What about DART communicating to, the staff and the council these things? It seemed like there's been a breakdown in communication between DART staff and our staff. Our staff not getting the type of information that they need, so, yeah, I agree. DART need to be, informed that they need to work more closely with the cities, even at a staff level.
Well, I think the other thing that we can look at in that arena as well is because one of the major criterias for doing things like this is Title VI dollars, where you have challenged areas where people live financially, what challenge means. And I think if we look at where these two are, they're probably in areas, I probably need to check with staff to see, because I know there's areas in the city based upon income. That's how we can spend our dollars for rec centers and parks and spend federal money in those areas. And so when you have an area with the income that qualifies for those type of services, they have to take that into consideration when they do the routes as well. So, Al, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of comments and questions for you, Chris, and for all of us to kind of, I'll tell you, my gut tells me there's something that we don't know. They're negotiating from their position, and we're kind of being brought into the process. Okay, that's number one. So I'm already starting to wonder, okay, what's this going to look like 3-4 months from now, and maybe beyond? So I've got a couple of questions. It looks like in Nadine's letter to you, Chris, they've changed up what they're now calling a general mobility program, which is really their quote-unquote regional program. And so that's a question of mine that basically said, are they setting new template of how they're going to operate and impact us going forward? The next is, I requested from Nadine the AECOM report. I still have not received it. Have we ever received it?
The details of it, no, but we were provided summaries by the DART staff at our working group.
That's not my question. Have we received the actual report? That
I
was-
have not received the actual
Okay.
report, no.
You understand where I'm feeling a little tender on what they're up to, okay? Because I can't take it to the bank, so to speak. The other part is, audit. I brought it up the last time. There are 3 audits that they have to have every February to the state. And we haven't got it. Well, why aren't we getting it? I mean, so I'm really starting again, I'm saying to myself, you know what? We really are taking their word and their process and how they're going forward, and yet we don't know how they're developing what they're laying in front of us. And then I want to go to the next item, which is under recap governance resolution, approved 2/12/26. And I start to look down at, and we then end up with the original number of seats. Now, this is proposed, am I correct, at the beginning of the discussion?
On the governance model, it is the proposed solution that we'd be bringing to the legislature, but you as a council have passed a resolution of support for this governance model.
Well, because I'm looking at it, and it says 2 seats for us, correct? And 2 for Plano, et cetera. 5 for Dallas. And then it goes to the next modified framework. So it's a moving target again. And then the numbers don't change for us, but they go from 5 to 7. So automatically, I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute. What are they doing to us? Okay? So I guess where my head is at this point, I want to step back and ask a very basic question. What is the very latest, if we approve tonight going forward to pull back our recommendation of going to the electorate, what is the very latest date if we find out in the next couple of weeks that they just pulled the wool over our eyes or they're manipulating? Because I don't trust them. I like the idea of us going forward together and trying to really, and by the way, Dennis, I really support what you're saying, but that's only one of the cogs. And maybe I'm using the text cog, okay, 75 million. At the end of the day, I really want to feel better that when we vote tonight to pull back, then what's our option to go forward? Because if I understand correctly, once we do it and it's final, whether it's tonight or a month from now or whatever the date is, we got to wait 6 years. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yep. So, I'm feeling tender tonight. So somebody answer my questions, please.
On the first one, on the GMP
Can
that
you
you
speak
had
up? I
asked.
can't hardly hear you.
On the first question, council member, that you asked on the GMP program, this program in distributing dollars back to the cities through this GMP is the same program that they have used previously. So there's not a different program there.
Okay.
We are very familiar with this program, and they have used it before, and we have used it before. So that's a secure program to use for this purpose.
Okay.
On the governance side, you can see here, and I pulled it back up the charts. I believe this is what you were referencing,
Yeah.
council member. You can see the current board makeup on that far left column. Irving right now has 1.51 seats
Yep.
on that board, which in and of itself is an odd structure. And when we went through the apportionment meeting, we being the mayor and I, back, I think it was like last August, July or August, and the necessity of DART to bring in a university to establish different options of how cities could then, in their seats, partner or coordinate with other cities and which cities should go with other cities. I'd respectfully submit, if you want to know the core problem and challenge with DART, it's the governance model as it exists, because that process was a mess, an absolute mess. And I think all the member cities identified that. They agreed to keep the same model, this is again last July, in anticipation of a governance change. And that's what you then see here. So if you look at Irving, as you move across, what you're seeing is the evolution of the discussion, Al. That's what you're seeing in the modified frameworks. It went from the original proposal, then we modified it with our proposal. Dallas then modified it with their proposal. And we tried to incorporate the feedback that we were receiving from the other cities, from Dallas in particular. So we are trying to get to that solution. So what you're seeing is the sausage-making process as you're moving across that spectrum of columns there. But in the end, currently Irving has 1.51 seats. If you move across, we will now have 2 seats. So we're actually increasing the total number of seats that we have, and we're increasing our proportional share of that vote. And our proportional share, as you compare that to the percentage of our population and our sales tax contributions, although not exactly proportionate to what those two columns are, it is roughly equivalent. And you can see which cities are, which cities aren't. Usually the larger cities, Dallas, Plano, Irving, and Garland, are going to have a little bit less. Some of the smaller cities are going to have a little bit more. The middle cities are going to be pretty much proportional, and that's going to be that balance. So that, you can see under the governance model, Irving is actually getting more seats and more proportional share.
Well, so are they. They're getting 45%. It started out with the first negotiation at 40%, then they went to 43.75. Now they're at 45%.
Yes.
The point is, it's a moving target with them, as far as I'm concerned, and it's pretty obvious. And I understand negotiations, I understand, and by the way, I really laud both you and Mayor Stouffer and what you've done to try to keep this thing going. But my concerns are, I mean, if you put all the numbers together, yeah, money is great and it's fungible, but governance is not.
Mm-hmm.
And until we lock that down, I don't know what the hell we have. So, end the comment.
So, Al, to put a little bit of perspective on it, the challenge we ran into was we started putting it together and we had city input and our input and everybody's input. But then the problem was we could never get Dallas to the table. So then Dallas came to the table and they said, well, if we have 5 seats, we still want 50%. So, and we said, no. We got to come to a number. So then they said, so they wanted 48%. Then we are at 43. We agreed at 45. Well, then they came back and they said, the problem is the population. We don't have it doesn't make sense to have only 5 people representing our population. We should have 7 people. So we said, okay, if you want to go to 7 people, that's fine, but you still have to stay at 45%. So we gave them 2 more seats, but they stayed at 45%. So it was a way for us, they were trying to say, we've got a bigger population, so we should have more votes. We should have more voting power. We said no. So what we have an agreement with them on is that regardless of, even if somebody drops out, if Farmers Branch drops out, or if the other 2 drop out, they will never have over 45%. So even if somebody drops out, then which adds more voting power to the pot, they will be stuck well, not stuck, that they're in a good shape, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're in the greatest shape of all of us. I mean, when you really think about it, they're gonna get $200 and some million back, and they really didn't lose anything.
Yeah, Rick, but
Mayor, if I may, they
let
are
me ask
losing
the
their
question.
proportional share.
Let me ask one more question.
Sure.
They're gonna have, I think as of today, there will be a total of 22 seats on the new board, am I correct?
Correct.
Of which they're gonna have 7. That's 30%, I guess, if I wanna do it. But at the end of the day, I guess, I don't know. And I think the critical piece for me, and I really would like us to get copies of that AECOM study that really supposed to talk about how ridership and return on investment, all the things that you've been talking about, David. And I don't see it, because I've asked for it, and I haven't got it yet. That was, 2 weeks ago, when you and I and Dennis were there. That was the 10th, if I'm not mistaken. But the other is the audits. Every year, by law, they've got to put it in, and we never get them. At least I don't think so. Right, Brett? Have you seen it? Yeah, well, okay, and that's my CFO. I mean, I really want to be able to have him look at it. So I'm going to stop. I know we've come a long way, but I really want to feel better that we really understand what we're really voting on. And if we vote tonight, then what's the options? If we got to come back, we find out there's a little bit change in what we're having to live with. So
Well, I think we're locked in on the voting, the 45 and stuff. I think, to your point, Al, the real work starts now because nobody trusts anybody for good reason. When we approve they send us their budget, and we look at it, and we had a bunch of questions this year, because they're always like, well, you never ask, what do you think it should be? Well, we gave them lists and lists and lists. I mean, they send a budget that big, and you know what our budget books look like. And, and they were very catty.
That's an indictment on you, by the way.
And they were very catty.
I accept
mean,
that.
Nadine said, we're not going to do a Chris Hillman budget that explains everything to you like your budget. I mean, she said that in front of everybody. And so, but I think what really needs to be done, if we move forward, I think the governance is locked down. I think we can, if we don't sign the agreement, the money goes away. So, for example, the three that are staying in for the vote, even if they win, even if the vote goes and they stay in, they've lost the money. So it's kind of like we did when we got the money from COVID. We either had to sign up and take it, and if we didn't within a certain time, we didn't get it. So in some ways, that money is on the table. The governance is on the table. But the reality of it is, and what I'm trying to get accomplished, and hopefully the rest of it will stick with us. I was at a couple of the mayors at breakfast this morning. I got the other 5 of them again on Monday morning, is that we need to keep the legal teams together and the city managers' teams together and the mayor's teams together. And we need to really step back and say, if we're going to move forward with this whole program where we're talking about we're going to get to 25%, then we really need to be in a situation where we have a group that's moving forward with that. So it goes back to the basic thing. We've got to get DART to determine what its real value is. Assets, liabilities, debt, everything. And then you've got to look at, if you're going to really make this work, you're going to create a separate rail entity. You're going to separate the bus and the light rail from the rail. So that entity then needs to pick up the debt and things of that nature. And we need to know how that's going to be financed. That goes to Dennis's question. Is that going to be financed through registration or through a tax at some other level? Well, if we're already paying, we shouldn't pay twice. So that's something that's going to have to be done. And I agree with, here's where the real nuts and bolts come together. We need an ironclad agreement between all of us on the change of the governance, the change of a penny, and how it can be done with the dollars that are out there. Right now, the only way you can reduce the penny, based on the legislation that created DART, is in 25% increments. And so we need something that does more than that. We need to codify this, because really, all this is a 6-year agreement. In 6 years, we're right back where we started today. In fact, we're 2 years behind because the dollars that are coming back to us are 2 years in the rear. Just like your taxes are a year in the rear, these are 2 years in the rear. So even when this thing's done, we'll have 2 years that we've had money created that we didn't get the full value during that time. So we need to be able to look at that and make sure, and those are just a couple, and there's some other things that really need to be addressed as how we lay this all out so people understand that it's got some teeth in it. And the only way any of this has any teeth in it is at the legislature. So
Thank
that's
you.
where we're going to need.
That's my point. Thank you.
That's where we're going to need you and
Mark, are you there?
Mark,
You're listening? You're taking
and
notes?
Chris and
And
everybody
you.
else. And that's where the real
Because that's where it's gonna, because whatever we do now, they can roll it back.
Well, and see, the other thing too, Chris, or Al.
I'm talking to state legislature.
Yeah. The other thing, Al, is that there needs to be a way of how we get in and out of DART. Right now, the debt that we have to pay back and how we have to move forward with this is determined by the board. There's no criteria. And then there's, things of that nature that need to be addressed. So we need to go through the whole enabling legislation and make sure that we've got everything covered. Mark, you had your light on, and Dennis, I've been rambling.
Well, yeah, but you've laid out a lot of the issues that still exist. I mean, and then this ILA, it doesn't restrict the selling of debt in the future by the board, does it? And so then, there's no, with this factor for how much the votes are weighted, with Dallas being so high, it does still appear that Dallas is going to have a controlling interest. Is less than 50%, but and they're going to be selling debt again, and we keep getting encumbered with that in the future. So making it more and more expensive for us to try to get out. We don't even know what that calculation is. They say $1 billion, and that's not determined by this. There's no discussion in this about about limiting how the debt can be sold in the future.
We had made that request as part of our discussion points. This ILA does not address the debt.
I think the problem we ran into, just to follow up on the number of votes. So basically, we have 2, Plano has 2. Dallas would have to get both Plano and us and at least one more. Or if we said no, they'd have to get 5 more cities besides themselves to get to the 50, well, actually 6 to get to 51. So the numbers, if you look at the weight of them, even though their number is 45, they've got to get quite a few of us all on the same page to get it, and to get the majority. The other thing is, like off the record, or on the record, whatever the record is, but we've requested that go back on the dartboard for consideration, myself and a couple others, that all debt issuance requires a 3/4 vote of the agency. So we're going to try to get that back on the boards for a decision to be made here in the next month or so. I mean, a lot of this we're trying to play catch-up on because, I'm going to be real honest with you, here's the bad part. We started this 1.5 years ago, and Dallas didn't engage till about,
December.
30 days, 35 days. So now we're trying to figure out how to get our arms around this and get the best deal we can to try to keep everything rocking and rolling. So you're right, Al, and you're all right. We got a low man, there's a ton of work that needs to be done here. But we got $51 million on the line, and we got a better governance. That's really what we've accomplished for the next 6 years. And then whatever we can as a group between now and the legislature come together and agree upon to also include in there. And I agree, Mark, maybe that's where if we can get 12 of the 13 cities to agree on debt issuance needs to come back before the city councils or something like that. That's something that we can utilize as we go down to the legislature, or you all go down to the legislature as well. So it's not perfect by any means. It's got a lot of work to be done on it, but I do think we have nailed down 2 things: the governance. To your point, Al, I think that if they start squirming on us and we go down to the legislature and said, hey, they agreed to this, all 13 of us agreed to this, and now they're squirreling on the 12 of us, that we may be able to have some teeth if we play the cards that way.
I wanted to ask, so the RTC, with them contributing these funds as indicated on slide 11, so is the RTC going to contribute any money to DART at the beginning to cover that 5%? Or DART really is losing 5% of that revenue?
DART has budgeted that 5% already for this fiscal year.
Okay, so the governance model, obviously that's a key component of this deal. And what it suggests to me is that there will be a change in the management of DART. Is that something with the RTC putting up this money? Is RTC putting up this money based upon their belief that the current management is going to be in place in the future and it can be trusted to actually make improvements to the system? Or is the supposition that there will be a change in the management of DART going forward which would justify these contributions?
I think they're doing it because they realize that they get $100 million a year through air attainment dollars. And I've been harping on it for 5 years that why should 13 member cities carry the full load of paying for DART when 16 counties and over 100 cities get $100 and some million to spend? Now, that's a double-edged sword, because that's the other thing that kind of got us in a pickle when we started talking about this whole fiasco, was the fact that Michael comes out and says, and I got this firsthand, so I know he said it, come out and he said, now you have to understand, if you vote out, you're responsible for paying back the dollars that were spent out of the air attainment dollars for projects in Irving. The first example he gave in front of everybody was that they gave $60 million to when we moved the Orange Line. So right away, we got a $60 million hickey on top of the billion plus, on top of how much of that was used for the interchange, how much of it was used for 183, how much is, I mean, we could have another several $100 million just by pulling out of air attainment dollars that were utilized just in that arena. So, I mean, this thing is so damn cumbersome and so intertwined like you've never imagined. And really, my hope would be that before the legislature, that we start untangling the thing and see what's really out there and what we're really liable for and what we're really responsible for. Because at this point, we got a board of directors who, there's myself and a couple others that have been on city councils and worked with budgets and stuff, but the rest of them, a lot of them are, they're just average, and I don't mean this disrespectful, but they're residents that want to dedicate their time, and they've never been in these situations to see the dollars and how they go. And it's, believe me, it's always fun to be on a board where there's a lot of money, and especially when it's not yours, to just spend it. Great. Sorry, I interrupted you again.
That's all right. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns here, and I'll leave it to you guys to ask questions.
Okay. Whichever one of you two want to go first.
Well, I'm going to encourage the council to make sure we do go ahead and approve this. There is still a lot of questions, but we have to understand that prior to all the actions that have taken place since these cities started calling these elections, DART board wouldn't even let us put our foot in the door. They wouldn't even open the door for you. Well, at least we've got the door open. But we still got some work to do for, like I said, for years to kind of completely get this straightened out. But one of the things that's important is, and Rick has said it, that all these other member cities, we got to be working together to accomplish these things. And what has happened is these cities working together has gotten us this far. But if we decide, well, there's so many things in there that we're not sure, we're not going to, vote to approve this or whatever, now we're sending a message to these other cities now that, Irving is not going to really work with them, but they need us and we need them. I will tell you, sitting on the RTC, this is very complicated. It is very complicated. At the last RTC meeting that I attended, they gave these two scenarios that they wanted us to look at, and one of the scenarios actually said that if a city withdrew or had a withdrawal election, they would not be eligible for any what's called formula funds. And I told them, I said, well, I don't think it's fair to a city I said, that's punishment, but anyway, all I'll simply say is this, it's not perfect, but we at least, we've gotten the horse out of the stall, and we just got to keep working with all these other cities and the legislators and everybody else. I don't think DART is dumb enough to start reneging on a lot of this stuff, because the RTC is putting a lot of money into this, and so everybody's trying to save DART. Dallas didn't want to give up that majority, but Dallas city council members and DART board members realize if you want to save DART, you got to give up something. And that was actually the words of one Dallas City Council member said, "I'm trying to help save DART." So my, request is that we do, it ain't perfect, but at least we do need to continue working with these other cities and improve this ILA.
Adam, and then Al.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I want to say thank you both and everybody for all the hard work. I really like that DART is trying to work with us. But if I'm being totally honest, I feel very uneasy about this, with all the open-ended questions and the unresolved issues. So yeah, Dennis, I think you said it right. Like, I think this is a start, but in the agreement, if we accept the funds, let's say 10 million or a little bit more a year, which is less than 10% what we put in, the condition is that we can't go to the legislature for 6 years, right? We can't do anything. And so I guess I'd like that concern to be, I'd like you all to talk me out off the cliff here, because it seems like we asked for 25%. They offered us 10 and said you can't do anything else, like take it or leave it. And if we leave it, then the window's open for a lot of punitive, financial measures and things like that. So, but is it really your all's feeling that they're going to continue to work with us after this moment? Because I can see it going through, and then it all stalls out again the way it did in the last legislative session. So I guess I'm.
Sure.
I would just like somebody to.
Well, the reason it's set up at 6 years is because at the end of it's basically we're either going to all work together, because we can only go to the legislature every 6 years for a pullout. So basically, they're saying, we're going to do these things over the next 6 years, and if we don't live up to it, then you're going to be able to say, here's the agreement, and we didn't do our job, and that's kind of where that went. But I agree with you. I mean, we're taking a leap of faith. One of you two I think Al was next.
I think Al was first, yeah.
I guess first of all, I've been very pro on a DART and a regional transit system, so I want to put that out there. Number one. Number two is, I'm prepared to vote for us not to go forward, as long as I understand if we can come back in so many days, 30 days, 45 days, and put it in there, because we're caught right now. Because if we don't show good faith on all this discussion, and we're kicking them in the teeth, that says another message. And there's going to be others, because whether we know it or not, this council is in a leadership position right now to kind of lead the rest of the flock. Let me put it where it really is. And so if we bolt and we don't do something now, then we got a different kind of problem. And so, but I really want to know, if we vote and pass tonight to go forward, to then pull it back, do we have the ability, if we find out something that all of a sudden it's not going the right way, can we come back and re-vote to put it on the ballot? That's my question. So I need somebody to answer my question.
Yeah, I can answer that question. You get one opportunity to call an election every 6 years. So if you withdraw the election, you don't get another opportunity for another 6 years. There is another mechanism in the legislation that talks about voter petition, which is a separate process. It does require, I think, 8% of your registered voters to submit the item. So I hope that answers the question. So you get one opportunity to do that. And I know there was, if I can, on the legislative action that was heavily negotiated. The original version of this that was submitted was no amendments to essentially Chapter 452 of the Transportation Code, which is the DART enabling legislation. This was negotiated down. Really, I think it was Plano and Irving pushing for it, that what we're agreeing, if you approve this agreement, is that we would abstain from legislative action seeking to amend that chapter to reduce or impair the 1 cent sales tax levy. So that is the piece that we cannot touch. at least during the duration of this agreement. But it leaves open all the other issues relating to governance and,
Sale.
yeah, all the other provisions that we have previously talked about here. So I'll stop there, but I hope that answers some
In
of the
KO, I
questions.
think, in
Well,
addition
thank
to
you
that,
for
even
answering
with,
that, because that's important, because I'm ready to vote and go tonight, and let's go get it done. But I'm going to say one thing. We are not done in this fight.
Oh, no.
We have got to then work all the way through it, because not only, I mean, we're not done by a long shot. So I really want to ask you, Chris, please get us a copy of that AECOM report. Get whatever we can from whatever they submitted to the state on their audits. I mean, we got blinders on, but we don't know what the hell they're talking to other people about. But at this point, okay, let's get our battle gear on.
Al, would you request that? Chair's going to be here tonight, so why don't you publicly request that from him? Luis?
All right, thank you. Well,
Thank you for
I
waiting.
guess we're not letting you get through the last couple of slides before we all go off. Well, I mean, to some extent, as I think Al was saying, and Mark was saying, and Dennis was saying, they only came to the table to give us like this 7.5% really because we put the thing on the ballot, right? We used the only thing that we have. And, there's more considerations. I think Mark was talking about the dead. I think it would be interesting to see something that gives us some certainty on that front before we take it off the ballot. And to some extent, the deadline is still the 18th. I know there's some concerns with having it printed on the ballot, but it could be interesting to wait for a few more weeks and see if they actually give us more, if they actually give us what would make us feel comfortable and protect our fiscal health going forward when it comes to capping the debt and perhaps reinstating some routes. On the other hand, as Al was mentioning, a lot of these things have been watered down quite a bit. We ask for 25%, and then we just see it, get slimmer and slimmer, and then we get stuck in this position for 6 years where it's, somewhat of an improvement, and I want to congratulate and thank everybody that has been, especially in the front lines, making that happen. Because, I understand that DART is very unflexible, and even that is a great achievement, but to some extent it does not really respond to everything that this council supported. And, the same thing happens a little bit with the governance model, where there's been a little bit of back and forth. And while the ILA seems to have teeth to it, right, if all the cities approve it by, I think, is April 30th, the governance model that the DART board passed on February 10th is a resolution. And just like it was passed, as soon as we take this off the ballot, what guarantees do we have? I don't feel confident that they're not just going to go back and be like, well, we changed our mind, or it's going to get watered down to the point where, we have this impression that we're going to get so many concessions, and then those get reduced in amounts that really undermine the spirit of what we're going after. So what are the teeth that the conversations on governance actually have? Because that ultimately depends on the legislature and what they will do, and that could go either way.
But I'll provide a couple of quick thoughts, and I'm going to invite Mark to come on up here to provide some quick thoughts on the legislative process itself. Councilmember, I think you very adequately stated, the ILA does have the teeth. It will provide the 10%. So once that is signed, they are contractually obligated to do so. It is not the 25%, but that is a signed, sealed, and delivered contract that they will then live up to. On the governance side, you are correct. There is no guarantee until the legislature makes the change in the actual legislation in 452 that documents how that governance structure is set up. I would propose, and Mark will tell me here if I'm right or wrong, based upon his great experience down there, we now have resolutions that have been passed by Dallas. Again, their majority is going from, I think, 53%, 54% down to 45%. They have passed a resolution in support of this governance structure. The DART board has passed a resolution in support of this structure. You have passed a resolution in support of this structure. Other cities have done so as well. If for some reason one of those entities, let's just say Dallas or Dart, pulls back from that saying, nope, we don't like that anymore, I believe we would still have a very strong voice at the legislature to say, this is what, when we were going through these discussions, this is what they had passed. And it's important for us to follow through on that. And I believe that we would have some listening ears at the legislature relative to what the position was. Mark, do you want to talk briefly on that?
Sure. Thank you. Mark Wiggins, Legislative Officer, and I think you bring up a great point, and the way that Chris explained it is exactly right. So in this issue in particular, the legislature, well, it was before the legislature in the last session, and legislators decided not to proceed with it in large part because they viewed it as a regional issue that needed to be worked out regionally. And if you want to think about it in the sense of each resolution that is passed by us, by the other cities, by DART, by the RTC, these are all creating, if you want to consider it, the paper trail that we will take down to Austin, and we can show that we have all negotiated in a collaborative process, and we've worked in good faith to put together this plan. And so if at some point, in the scenario that you raise, if someone were to walk away from that plan, I think that we're well positioned. We have the documentation that we have worked in good faith to put this together. And I think that will give us the strongest position possible to present to the legislature and asking them to make the changes that we want them to make.
Okay, that sounds good. However, that does not, the ILA is contingent on pulling the election off the ballot, right? But in theory, that paper trail exists, whether or not that is left on the ballot and whether or not the voters, I mean, if, let's say we leave it on the ballot and the voters choose to stay, that paper trail could still be usable with the legislature.
We would not, well, if we were to proceed forward with the election, then that would be under the assumption that we don't approve the ILA. And so we would not have that to take down to the legislature and show that we've been part of this process.
Right, but we would still have the resolution supporting the governance model from DART and from Dallas.
That would be correct. I think that the legislature would also look at, well, if you put it out to a vote of your residents and your residents decided to stay in DART, is that a statement to say that they support the current structure? That could be a question that would come up from the legislators if that were to occur. I think that may help address some of the thoughts that you had there.
Let's see. Yeah. Are you going to speak? That's crazy. Yeah, and what would the mechanisms be to get some commitment? But maybe that's a question for KO and executive. I will have some questions for executive session. When it comes to getting some commitments on the debt issuance, because otherwise, you know, they might just get us into as much debt as they please before the state legislature does anything about it. And, you know, right? And we cannot do anything about it.
The debt model, again, that was one of the components that we put in our request. We feel that there needs to be, and I'll use this word, more oversight on the debt issuance that DART places. I think an immediate resolution, and this is what the mayor had just discussed before, are changes in how that debt, at least at the DART board level, is approved. Are there supermajorities that are required? How can we work that discussion angle through the DART board relative
And would
to
that
the debt?
specific change require the state legislature to change anything at
I believe the way the
That could be
DART
internal
board
with the
structure
That could be
can set
done
up how they
internally.
do
In
it.
fact, Doug Herbacek, who's our representative, is the one who sent the information in yesterday and to get it on next week's agenda, so.
That's good. Yeah, well, we'll see.
David?
Just one clarifying question is, when does the Board of Directors, the government model change? After the legislature signs it, or Can
It's
Dart,
once the law is passed and
once the law is
changed.
passed, so up until then, Dallas will still continue
Yes.
there.
And that, it was usually September following the session, I believe. Is that correct?
Right.
So it depends on when the effective date of the bill would be, and oftentimes, that's September 1st, but, that's all dependent upon how the bill is drafted. It could be effective immediately if
Effective
that's the
immediately
way
in
that
the
it's
draft.
drafted. And that's not addressed anywhere in the ILA or in the governance discussion, so that'd probably be a point of discussion heading into session.
Okay, good, thank you. And also, I liken this to a 43-year marriage, and we decided to file for divorce. Now, everybody came back to the table and said, let's not get a divorce, let's do all these things. Thank you for your great work, KO. Chris, I'm sure you and the city managers have had a real fun time on this, the legal team getting all this drafted, from the mayor on down to the dartboard. I was shocked when Dallas gave up the governance model. They voted 14-1. I didn't think that was going to happen. It did happen. There's a lot of players in this region, and we are a big player in this region. This transportation is a regional issue that we're going to have to solve. For us to get out of it, I think we did the right call for calling for this election, and we see what happened. Things have changed, and things will continue to change. And these are the things where we'll get money back. We're going to put more money into data in DART and in our cities' infrastructure to get more data. This is one of the, Dan's done a great job of presenting what DART finds, and I've seen Dan's operations. I've seen our city operations. We are a big piece of the betterment of DART in the future. And I think these agreements of what they've done, what they've worked on, will spur this. So after 43 years of marriage, I'm ready to give it 6 years of consolidate, consoling each other again. But that doesn't mean the work doesn't stop. We need to bring the flowers, we need to take them out to dinner. So, this is a thing. We've got to work to make a regional transportation system work. They saw how the hammer dropped from these 6 cities, and I'm appreciative we did it. Now it's time, and I've read the agreement, and thank you for the hard work. Now it's time to get to work these next 6 years and make this region a great transportation region. We've seen the numbers. We've seen the numbers from New York, Chicago, all these different places. Where do we rank? And it's not good. It's not good, but it can be great. And that's where we have to push this forward. And we need to make sure we're spending these dollars wisely. I really would like to, in the next 6 years, what is the divorce decree if we ever do it? There's a lot of question marks. We put it back to the voters and we vote out of DART. We don't know what the number is. We don't know, and that's a big, big problem for me. We've got things that we've got to keep our eye out. We need regional transportation. We need to be in the system, but we need to fix it. I think y'all done a great job in this first step, but we're not even at first base yet, and we've got a long way to go home. So I appreciate all the work. I'll be voting to withdraw the election tonight, but that doesn't mean the work does not stop yet.
Abdul. Dennis. I was going to say, we got about 20 minutes here, so.
Well, let me just say
we
one
can
thing.
go into executive.
To address, Luis, and everybody need to understand that Section 8 of this ILA, okay, this is the same for every city, the ILA is. So you cannot, in other words, if you want to try to continue to do some negotiations to try to get something better for us, under that section, it then changes for every other city. So if somehow we want to say that we want to, get an extra 15%, whatever, in our ILA, it would then, and if DART agreed to that, it would then be for every city to get the same things, and that's not going to happen. So as we talk about this, we need to realize that we're not talking to change this ILA any, we're talking to accept it, because any changes that makes it favorable to us will automatically also go to every other 13, every other city. I just want to make that point.
Abdul.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment on a couple of things, and just for my understanding. We have seen so many emails from our constituents in support of DART. And though the ridership is low, though the some of the service issues are there, but still, with these three components of governance and finance and service, I think we have made some progress in these negotiations, I believe, with the good faith. It's a huge, huge deal that the Dallas has given up their majority of the power. So they are 45% of the vote, and I would say that the member cities would have more say into it in the future negotiations based on that governing model. On the finance side, I think they have not agreed to 25%, but 10% to start with. And I think we should take it and move on with it for the future to see as David says, the work is not done yet. We still have a lot of things to work on. On the service side, we have no assurance on getting back those two routes in any shape or form, or any alternates are out there that we could consider?
Not immediately, no, sir. I believe that in the next budget discussion from the DART board, we should have a very strong push per the mayor's decision, or I'm sorry, the mayor's thoughts on having those routes return. I believe there are options available that we could look at a private provider, to help supplement that DART component using the GMP dollars that we have. But I agree with what the mayor is saying, that we need to put pressure on DART to return those routes. That is one, if not the primary concern that we had from a service level.
So
in the meantime, that may take some time. The mayor mentioned that. So we're going to be working with you as a council, as staff, bringing you different options on how to approach that, maybe with some interim solutions.
So this is a question for you, Chris. If you have a feel that there is a possibility that we could bring these two routes back, or at least we could provide some alternate services on those routes, I think we should go and move forward with it.
One way or the other, I believe it's important to get those routes back. And I believe that primary focus would be DART. And if for some reason that does not work, I believe we have options available.
Okay. What do we need to do on the park deal? We got 5 minutes. We got any problems with the park? Everybody okay with the park? Okay, everybody's okay with the park. Do we need, all right, do we need an executive session?
Mayor, council, the time is 6:39. The Irving City Council will convene into an executive session, and this is to receive legal advice.
You guys go grab food.
Summer fun ahead.
We're going to add different amenities.
This is the fun part of the job. You're out here actually doing something.
This construction will lead to one of several new attractions that are expected to debut this summer. We visit multiple sites to check out the progress. Serious training.
Report to triage over there.
You're still just trying to go through the motions like it is real.
Irving firefighters take on an exercise simulating their response to tragedy. See how new technology is helping with efficiency. Plus, the program celebrating Black culture, now on City Source.
We have been talking a lot about the new indoor aquatic center coming to Center Park. Weather permitting, it is expected to open this summer. But that is not the only improvement underway in Irving Parks and Rec. We visited several spots seeing upgrades.
Definitely the sounds of construction.
Yes, a lot of demo going on.
This work is making way for a brand new playground at Northwest Park. Here's an idea of what it will look like.
A whole bunch of different nets and climbing events and slides and swings. One day it can be like it's a castle, next day it's a spaceship. Where they're working right now, that's going to be where the swing sets are.
The new equipment replaces a playground that was more than 25 years old. Along with the play equipment on the way, this new outdoor workout area is already available for use. Also, more of the park will be illuminated, and existing lighting is being updated.
We've gone to a new LED lights, so the whole trail will be lit up now.
All of the improvements are on track to be complete this summer. Our next stop is the Heritage Senior Center courtyard.
It's a giant, great area, but it's just underutilized.
That's expected to change with new additions, an expanded turf area, video screens, an outdoor kitchen, and more shade.
Because it does in the summer get quite warm.
I bet. This project is also scheduled for summer completion, and then inside,
Get a whole new ballroom floor.
right now, there are gaps and breaks covered with tape. Patrons have noticed.
We have classes, exercise classes, we have dances, we have parties. Every day we're using it.
After more than 2 decades of heavy use, the floor will be replaced.